actually I will speak to in a few minutes as well, since a lot of them, a very good news story, are centered around our efforts in the City of Hamilton. In terms of some of the capital projects that we've included in the 2017 budget, I think you'll see a theme here. There's some money dedicated to improving our flood forecasting operations. There's looking at modernizing our data management, looking at updating our mapping, investing in our GIS capabilities. Again, these are areas which may reside on the capital side of things, but what they really do in future years is they make the organization more efficient, more responsive to requests from our partners, both on the municipal side as well as the private sector, by enabling us to have more modern tools at our disposal. So we're not just throwing people to tackle issues, but we're actually looking at streamlining, being more efficient, more data sharing with our partners, and things of those sorts. So I think these are good investments to make today and over the next few years to really modernize the organization. So in terms of our municipal forecast, as you can see from this, looking at 2018, 19, and 20, without really bringing in an asset management plan, we're still seeing those peaks and valleys, mostly driven by our capital needs. And what you do see on the operating side is to some extent being driven by debt financing charges that keep coming up on the operating side. We don't want to do this. I don't feel it's sustainable for the organization. I don't feel it's sustainable for our funding partners, including the City of Hamilton, to see budget requests that go up and down like this. So the idea is to develop a capital asset management plan if we can get the capital out of the way. I already know we're very good on the operating side, and to try and smooth out all of this so we have a sustained level of funding for our capital assets to enable us to maintain our service levels, to enable us to address the risk that's associated with not meeting those service levels, and to also enable us to have adequate reserves that we're contributing to from our operating side. So various funding options, and we're working quite actively now with Halton Region, being 85% or more of our apportionment comes from Halton Region, and we have been working over the past year, and I am fairly confident that during the first half of this year, we will have a capital asset management plan, which I would then like to bring and share with staff at the City of Hamilton, and hopefully we will not be seeing these kinds of peaks and valleys in our funding requirements. As I mentioned, I wanted to speak a little bit to the Kelso Dam project. So Kelso is a dam that we own and operate on 16 Mile Creek. Built around it is the Kelso Conservation Area, Glen Eden Ski Center, and we're in need of some major upgrades to repairs, really, to that structure. At this point, we're expecting $5.2 million in costs associated with that. We've secured almost all of that. We're just waiting on the province to send us confirmation on their grant, but we have been in receipt of a federal grant, and the region of Halton is going to be funding the grants. Between the federal and the provincial grants cover about half the cost. The other half is being financed by Halton Region. It's not a true benefiting levy in that it is debt financed, and as it stands now, the repayment of that debt will get added on to our operating budget, which means our other municipal partners will be contributing to that. So that is another area that we're looking to address once we come up with our capital management plan, to see what funding options we have that make sense for us, that are not exclusively centered around issuing debt to repair these assets. We are planning on undertaking the works in spring this year. I've included some images about our infrastructure to sort of give an idea of the types of structures we own, the state they're in. You know, as a public body, we're not different than anybody else when it comes to our infrastructure. This is Kelso Dam, the one I was talking about just a few minutes ago. We own some channels in Milton that were built a very, very long time ago. They were built on, with the science that was available then, so they're all concrete lined, and they are in need of extensive repairs. We do have now a very good program where we monitor the condition of the slabs, and we've come up with a long-term plan on how to replace those slabs and modernize the channel or upgrade the channel, maintain it in a good state of repair over the next number of years. This is our other channel, Hager-Rambo channel. Between the two, it's about 12 kilometers of concrete channel that we own. But the news isn't all bad. We've added some fantastic new infrastructure as well over the past few years. And in fact, a lot of this has been funded by revenues that our parks operation generates. And what that allows us to do is invest it right back into capital and hopefully add a lot of value to our community members. So this is the Deer Clan Longhouse at Crawford Lake that was built, and I'd like to announce, actually, we've been in receipt of a couple of grants just over the past month that'll allow us to upgrade and modernize the two other longhouses that we have at Crawford Lake. A new raptor enclosure at Mountsburg, a new barn at Mountsburg as well, which is an active activity center for children and families, new Hilton Falls workshops, so we're investing again in our operational capacity as well. Just as busy as we are with our park operations, it's very important for us to retain our focus not just on adding new infrastructure that increases programming, but also our ability to continue to address the visitor impact on the environment, to continue to address health and safety and risk management issues at our parks. In terms of some of the challenges, I think these images speak for themselves. This is all infrastructure that we have that is quite actively in use. A lot of the images you see right now are on the non-tax supported side. So again, we're working on a plan to be able to renew, replace, improve these structures through the funds that we generate from our park user fees. This is our workshop, our ops yard, our rest house, which I think affords you anything but that, and we're looking to upgrade those. This is our rental shop, if you will, at Glen Eden, and Glen Eden's a fantastic story, being where we are in terms of geographically located this far south, next to the 401. It is now Ontario's third busiest ski operation, and when we put this facility in, like many of the facilities that the Conservation Authority put in over the years, it was meant to be temporary, 2 years, 3 years, and then we'll figure it out. Well, 15 years later, these facilities are still there, and it's time for us to start to tackle some of those because they're great destinations. You couldn't buy land today. We have them. They're under public ownership. They're being run quite well from an operational standpoint. We have master plans for most of our parks, with the exception of one. And I think with the right investment, the right business planning, we can really build something unique here for residents of the watershed. Again, this is the inside of one of our buildings, a chalet we call it. I want to switch gears a little bit and talk a little bit about some of the value that we add as an organization, both in terms of our social, economic, and of course our environmental benefits. It's going back to our park operations. In 2016, we hired 717 seasonal employees at our parks. We paid $3.16 million in wages to those employees. All of those wages did not come from tax sources. They came from revenues generated by the parks, and we feel that's a really good investment back in our communities. Doing some quick math, about $316,000 worth of those wages were paid to residents who live in Hamilton and work at our parks. If you add these two numbers up between visitation at our parks and visitation at Glen Eden, we're very, very close to reaching 1 million visitors a year at our parks, which again is a fantastic story to tell. But what it also means is we really need to pay attention to some of the things I mentioned earlier in terms of capacity, visitor impact management, and the quality of the experience that the region's only going to continue to grow. By that I mean small R region, right, including Hamilton, including Halton, Guelph, Kitchener-Waterloo corridor, as well as Peel. And so we are really looking at keeping our eye on how we're going to continue to manage these resources. We also feel we're a big tourist draw in that part of the watershed. We offer lots of special events that bring people in. A lot of these events are offered during weekdays. So for instance, the smallest number there is 950 visitors to our bike races. That's a Wednesday afternoon or a Tuesday afternoon. That's a lot of people that come in, take part, and a lot of them are coming from outside the main core area that's around our parks. We continue to focus on education. It's been a part of the fabric of Conservation Halton and of many conservation authorities. And we're close to 50,000 students that come from school boards, a sizable number from the Hamilton area as well, that take part primarily through our two main education centers at Mountsburg and Crawford Lake, but also through lots of festivals that emphasize various aspects of environmental education, experiential environmental education, Forest Festival, Water Festival, our Ways of the Woods Day Camp. In terms of stewardship, in 2016, just under 6,000 acres of land were protected through our watershed stewardship program. We planted 115,000 trees last year, and on the other side of that, we're also looking at implementing a very active, proactive program to manage EAB-infected trees. We started that program last year by the removal of 2,500 trees, and we've actually put together an operational and a business plan that looks at a 10-year program to tackle all of those trees. We estimate between 50 to 100,000 trees just on our lands that need to be taken down. About 50,000 are trees that we feel are in high-risk areas, so those are the ones we're going to prioritize removal and then spread out from there. Environmental monitoring, and I always say this is the data that kind of forms the very foundation of decision-making when it comes to environmental management, be it on the planning side, be it on the stewardship or restoration side. Our staff monitor hundreds of species of plants, mammals, birds, fish, and reptile. A lot of this data is shared with our municipal partners. It's shared with ecologists at various organizations, with consultants, and this is an area where some of the technology upgrades we're talking about will also take place. So when we have better database management, better analysis, we have a lot of data, and we're looking to improve and enhance our analytical capabilities with that data, so we can actually add more value to what we're sharing with our partners. Still with environmental monitoring, we have 20 wells, 4 rain gauges, and 6 wetlands where we conduct active monitoring year after year to study surface water interactions, both in terms of quality and quantity. And these also help drive some of the comments that we're asked to either through our permit program or through our plan review services provide to our clients. Flood forecasting, this is an area that is a priority. It's been listed as a priority under our new strategic plan. We've already made tremendous strides this past year in modernizing some of our operations. There's still a lot of work to do, not just on the capital side. It's not all about rebuilding some of these structures or maintaining them, but it's about our ability to understand what happens on the ground when we have a rain event, and how the neighborhoods will react, how the streams will react, both looking at the hydrology and the hydrogeology, and being able to gather that data, analyze it, and then share it with our municipal partners. And the benefits of that, the faster we can do it, the more accurate we can be, the more value we can add in terms of emergency response capabilities that our municipalities are looking at achieving, as well as having this data to look at how development and land use changes over the years are impacting the ability of our watershed to absorb or contribute to runoff through significant events. So lots of improvements that are going there. And again, at the basis of that is the ability to have equipment that monitors the environment in real life, that we have models that we can put this data into and then actually provide results and analysis. Yeah, this past year, as I mentioned, we have invested quite a bit. I won't go through the entire list, but you do have it in front of you. Again, both in terms of infrastructure and also in terms of modernizing some of our other equipment. As I mentioned, the result of this, hopefully the benefit of this, the outcome will be an increase in lead times for flood warning messages, but also the availability of data to our municipal partners to make good decisions in a timely fashion by understanding better the hydraulic and hydrogeological connections. In terms of our regulations, the permitting role that we have in 2016, we issued 376 permits and 61 letters of permission. We've worked quite hard over the past few years, and in 2016 we really looked to now consolidate how our service levels are. They're actually quite good now compared to a few years ago, and I will show you a slide that illustrates that point a little more clearly. In terms of our plan review, again, I think we're one of the busiest authorities in the province, just given the nature of a development that's occurring within our watershed, and so a lot of these things keep us busy as well. In Hamilton, we've issued, in 2016, we issued 65 regulation permits, and we reviewed 109 planning files. So as I mentioned before, if you look at these two graphs, we're quite happy with the direction we're going in. We've cut down almost in half the amount of time we spend reviewing permits now. We're meeting provincial guidelines, and in many cases we're exceeding them. So out of the 6 weeks, slightly over half of the permits are actually being issued within a week. And there are a lot of permits where we're responsive now, where if things are simple and the applications are coming in at a very good, in good shape, we can turn them around in 24 to 48 hours as well. And we've been working quite actively with the agriculture community over the past year, myself personally involved as well as my staff, to look at what we can do to ensure that we're paying attention to their needs when they're in need of our permits. Looking at some of the other review times, again, it's a similar story. So complex creek works from 14 weeks down to 6, stormwater management outfall, and emergency municipal infrastructure at the end from 5 weeks down to 1 week. So again, we're heading in the right direction. And I'd like to acknowledge the investments that our municipal partners have made in our operating capacity over the few years. We're seeing results. Hopefully you're seeing results. I'll speak to my strat plan a little bit later on in the presentation. We're meeting these targets about 85% of the time. We'd like to meet them close to 95% of the time, so there's still a lot of work to do. That last 10% is going to be tough, but I'm fairly confident that we'll get there, especially if we continue to invest in some of the technological upgrades that I feel we need to make us more efficient. In terms of our partnership projects, I have a few projects that I'd like to very quickly mention because they are taking place in Hamilton. One of the major ones, and I know Councillor Partridge, you've been involved and are very familiar with this, is at Courtcliffe Park. It's a major project. It's going to cost about $500,000. For 2017, we've secured about $200,000 worth of funding. And one of the points I'd like to make there is the City of Hamilton's contributed $10,000 to this project. And conservation authorities, both mine and I think others as well, really have a good ability that they demonstrate where they can become the secretariat for these large projects that involve that should involve municipal, provincial, federal partnerships, and we're able to leverage your dollars, $10,000, into a $200,000 project. So there's good return. All of the works are, of course, taking place within the city of Hamilton. What you see in this picture, we're actually, our staff are putting in some recycled Christmas trees as sediment traps. About 200 Christmas trees that we collected have gone in to kind of reduce the width of the channel, and by turning them into sediment traps, eventually they'll become part of a more stable bank that's narrower than what you see there. But this is a tremendous project. It's going to result in about 1 kilometer's worth of cold water stream rehabilitation. About 5,000 community volunteer hours have already gone into this project in 2016, and there's lots more to it. There are a lot of details. I think it's going to help restore the ecosystem, build resilience towards climate change. And if you're more interested, we'd love to come back at a later time and provide an update to Council on this project. Similarly, part of this project, we also planted 1,300 native trees and shrubs along the banks of the creek in Courtcliff Park. We continue to participate in the Coots to Escarpment Steering Committee to produce management plans for the Eco Park system. We're also working through the Governing Council of Coots to Escarpment to look at land acquisition and see how Conservation Halton can assist bring this vision to reality. Another project that we're involved with is at Waterdown Woods Cartwright Nature Sanctuary, and this is looking at, again, looking at invasive species, looking at restoring some of the native species that are under threat. What you see in this image, the mottled duskewing and American Columbo are two of the species that we're looking at implementing a recovery strategy. We continue to work. This is Pleasant View, or the Hopkins Tract, is one of the properties that Conservation Halton acquired as part of the Coots to Escarpment system. We acquired it last year. We have a sizable mortgage of $858,000 to pay off for this site. We were actually able to pay off $150,000 last year, and we're aiming to reach that this year as well. So we're plowing through that as quickly as we can with lots of support from donors and funders, and our own foundation board has committed to helping us do this. Again, 10 hectares deciduous forests, 14 hectares of fallow land. A majority of it it's in the City of Hamilton, but a majority of it is actually also located within the City of Hamilton's natural heritage system. So again, I think this is a great project that we're partnering on. And then lastly, we've been in discussions with the City of Hamilton as a partnership to look at this site with the objective of creating 1 hectare wetland on a grindstone creek. And if I were to tie all of these things back, if you go back to the first slide, Courtcliff, it's something that was identified in our sub-watershed study back in 2002. So the value of monitoring and data and investing in these studies sometimes isn't evident for years down the line, but we've been pursuing this site for the better part of 15 years. So to actually be able to get works in the ground done is incredibly exciting for us. And lastly, we launched a new strategic plan. We continued consultations throughout the summer and late fall on our first draft, and I anticipate taking a final draft to our board within the next 30 days or so. It's a good strategic plan. I do encourage you to read it. It's on our website, and I think what you'll see there is very clearly at the very beginning of the strategic plan, we lay out some objectives, some goals and targets that we're committing to. Amongst those are targets to limit our or to maintain discipline on our finances, to address our capital needs, and to reduce service delivery times around our permits and planning products, as well as some environmental targets that we've since added. And with that, I'd like to thank you for your continued support and for giving me this opportunity this morning. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Hassan. I have no speakers right now, but I would like to turn the chair over to Councillor Marula. And I have a couple of questions for you. Councillor?
Yes, the floor is
Okay,
yours.
thank you. And first of all, I really appreciate you putting the Courtcliff Park project up there. And that is one that, in working with Halton, with staff, and with the community of Carlisle and Freelton, we've been able to really leverage that project into community engagement. Like, you know, it's just wonderful to see even the Christmas trees that you pointed out. We, you know, got all the folks in Carlisle, and they, you know, put their trees out, and staff collected the trees and took them to Courtcliff Park, and I think they piled up. There was at least a couple of hundred of them there. Yes. And, you know, and then the day that they actually were putting those trees in the Restoration Park, we held a community event. And, you know, so it was terrific. And the people in the community really feel like they're part of what's going on, you know, especially with the Union Gas pipeline going through. That's been a bit of the other side of the coin. So I do appreciate you raising that. My question through you, Chair, is to do with the Mountsburg Dam itself. You did talk about the other dam at Kelso, of course, that needs rehabilitation. And, you know, we have so many, Conservation Halton, by the way, just so everyone knows, looks after the majority of Flamborough, just north of Waterdown, and I believe including Joe Sands Park, which is just north of Waterdown. So it's quite a large area that you are stewards of. But I'm just wondering if you could speak to the health of Mountsburg Dam itself, which is at the back, the lake that's behind Mountsburg Conservation Area. It's all part of that, but the dam is actually a separate area.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. We do have, when it comes to our dams, there are, the good news is that there's some very clear standards in terms of how often inspections need to take place, the various aspects of a dam, and what maintenance works have to be undertaken at those intervals. And so on the side of our dams, we're very, very good. The situation with the Kelso Dam is more of an acute situation that we're looking to address. It's not the result of negligence or anything like that. And Mountsburg falls in the same category. It's either 2018 or 2019 that we do have some significant works planned for Mountsburg Dam. It's in our long-term capital budget. I don't have the exact numbers or the nature of the work, but it is in good shape. It's functioning the way it needs to function, and we'll continue to maintain it moving forward. But I'd be more than happy to email you further details on that.
Well, I do, and I thank you for that. I do have you on my radar, actually, to set up a meeting and get together to talk about some other things within the Flamborough community of which you have carriage of that I'd like to move forward. But Mountsburg Dam is such a large dam, and I'm glad to hear that there is going to be some capital work potentially for 2018, 2019. Mr. Chair, this is, you know, certainly a very large area, and it's well used by a lot of people from Flamborough and right across the city, actually. And you mentioned about Glen Eden, and I can attest to the number of people from the city of Hamilton that actually work at Glen Eden. There's quite a few of them. Whenever we go over there skiing, I'm always running into people that we know from Hamilton, and you provide a tremendous opportunity for our students and for our young people to not only be employed but to volunteer. A significant number of volunteers throughout all of the Conservation Halton properties. So, Mr. Chair, those are the only questions and comments that just one more. So the City of Hamilton, Hassan, had asked for all of our boards and agencies to come back with a 1.8% increase. And you're coming in at, correct me if I'm wrong, but is it 2.3 or 2.2?
No, it's 5.3.
5.4.
5.4, sorry.
But does that, what amount of money does that equate to in terms of the increase?
So the overall increase between 2016 and 2017 is just over $10,000.
Okay, so it's a $10,000 increase. All right, thank you very much. I have no further questions. I'll take the chair back.
No further speakers.
All right, and Councillor Pearson, please. Yes. Motion to receive, Councillor Pearson.
Thank you.
And Councillor Aidan Johnson, all in favour? And that is carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, and next we have the Grand River Conservation Authority, and I'd like to call upon Joe Farwell, the CAO, and Helen Jowett, Chair of the Board, to provide the presentation for the Grand River Conservation Authority. Welcome.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair.
And I don't see a Helen, so could you introduce?
Helen's not here. The Minister of Natural Resources is at our office today, and that was a last-minute announcement on funding. And
no problem.
And we came forward with that. But I do have Keith Murch with us, who's the Secretary-Treasurer for the Grand River Conservation Authority.
Thank you. Welcome, gentlemen. Go ahead. And
apologies that we don't have a formal presentation on a stick to put into the computer, but we do understand that you have a presentation in front of you. So to the first slide, we'll talk about the Grand. It's the picture with the map of the Grand River watershed. Again, it's the largest watershed in southwestern Ontario, and the major tributaries are the Speed, Aramosa, and Nith. Fairchild Creek is the portion that actually drains a portion of Hamilton. There's about 1 million people. There's 50 municipal drinking water systems and 6 nation systems and 30 sewage treatment plants. We have a strategic plan at the Grand, and it's actually focused on public safety, flood control, regulations that actually deal with the flood management. And it's certainly one of the fastest growing regions in southwestern Ontario. We really understand the vitality of the river and how important the link between the river and the natural environment is. But we do face a number of emerging challenges. I think one of our large challenges right now, and you're seeing it around us even today, is climate change. The weather's really changing in a significant way. We're dealing with storms, extreme events that we haven't seen before, and the past is becoming a less reliable predictor of the future. So we do expect some challenges, and we also anticipate another 500,000 people in our watershed over the next 30 years or so. Certainly going to cause some stress on the natural environment. Existing agriculture is, or extensive agriculture is a big part of our watershed. 70% of the watershed is farmed. So our ongoing work with the farm community is a really important thing that we do at the Grand. In terms of our budget, the Conservation Authorities Act review is important. We've included a slide in there that really focuses on the role of conservation authorities and highlights that we are partners with municipalities, the province, and the federal government. We've included a piece on the levies, the current and proposed things, and I'm not really going to spend a lot of time on that because that's what we put forward to the province. We haven't actually heard back from them, but you do have that slide in front of you, and Keith will be able to address any questions on that matter. Slide number 8 is our slide on source protection program. Again, after 8 years, we have completed our source protection plan for the Lake Erie region, which includes Long Point, Catfish, Kettle, and the Grand. The province did fund 100% of that work, and we're hopeful that they'll continue to fund during the implementation phase of that project. The 9th slide really highlights the role of our reservoirs in managing the Grand and its main tributaries. And again, about half of the flood peak we're able to deal with through our reservoirs. The reservoirs are in the upper part of the Grand, and the flow in the lower portion of the Grand is really highly regulated by our reservoirs. Slide 10 relates to our enhanced technology and improved monitoring. Our organization hasn't really grown at the same rate as our watershed has grown. We're relatively the same number of staff people, but we're able to leverage technology to get the same level of work done. And there's just some slides there with some of the information that we have on our improved weather technology, some of our improved mapping, and certainly some upgrades to the way we communicate for our flood warning system. The Rural Water Quality Program is something that we're very proud of in the Grand. Since its inception, we've completed 5,500 projects and handed out about $16 million in grants. That's over a several-year period, but you can see in your slide number 11 the number of little red dots on the map, and that's an important piece. And there's getting to be a number of them in the Hamilton area as well. So in Hamilton, in 2016, we did do 5 projects, and it really amounted to $13,000 in grants. Overall, there's been 92 projects and about $160,000 of grant distributed within the Hamilton to the farm community. So the rural water quality program, again, a really important piece of what we do. In terms of planning, slide 14, that relates to our planning services. We have a number of biologists, engineers, terrestrial folks on staff, and we provide, through a memorandum of understanding, plan comments to the city on planning matters, much like the other conservation authorities do. It really helps the city to leverage our expertise on these things, and we do view our planning comments from a watershed perspective, which I think is an important part of the effort. GRCA land holdings. GRCA holds 48,000 acres of land, and it includes 11 parks, Luther Marsh, and 6 nature centers. Our current initiative is really to focus on what business area we're in. A number of our reservoirs were created by purchasing farms. They came with houses, so we did have a long-term rental program. It's getting to the point where that rental program isn't even breaking even. So we're getting out of that business and severing and selling properties where we can, and in some cases demolishing places. And we do have a need for some of those funds to deal with matters like the emerald ash borer, certainly a significant problem in the Grand with all our land, and we're hoping to receive approval from the Minister of Natural Resources to use our reserves for that, so it doesn't have a levy impact. Subwatershed planning in Fairchild Creek, about 40% of the subwatershed is in Hamilton. It actually adds one of the highest sediment and phosphorus loads to the Grand, and that's not necessarily, that's just the geography of the area, the geology of Fairchild Creek, and we're going to continue to work with landowners to reduce that impact. It's certainly listed as a priority area within our water management plan. We've completed a characterization report for Fairchild Creek, and we're continuing to work there. There's a wellhead protection area in Linden that we're working at through our source protection plan. And again, our funding is received through the source protection program, and we're looking forward to getting that completed over the next year or so. We do run 57 long-term monitoring wells across the watershed for groundwater. 4 of them are located in the city of Hamilton, and we're able to measure groundwater on an hourly basis, and this will help with future planning decisions around water allocation and water use. The slide 20 really just relates to how our groundwater planning, sort of all the uses for it. It's to help us understand climate change. The researchers can use it. We use it for planning applications to understand the impact of drought, and certainly for source protection planning. Our budget 2015 and 16 were certainly record years within our parks. They generated about $8.5 million of revenue this past year. Our budget's typically around $7.2 million of revenue, and certainly the population growth has been driving some of that attendance at the parks. The other piece that's actually driving it is these extremely warm summers we've been having. So it does put pressure on our parks. They were originally intended to both provide recreation and to protect natural spaces. So it's really critical in terms of our long-term planning for the parks. And outdoor education, certainly we put 40,000 kids through our nature centers in the Grand. We have day camps in the summertime, and certainly our strategic goal is to really introduce kids to the natural environment so that they actually are the ambassadors to protect it down the road. So Keith will take you to slide 23 and take you through the rest of the presentation, which deals specifically with the budget. And is George here now? Oh, I just noticed George Stojanovic, our member for Hamilton, has joined us in the crowd.
Welcome, George. Nice to see you. Thank you, Joe. Keith? And if you could just reference the slides in a similar fashion as you're going through.
Yeah, I'll do that. I apologize,
and
we didn't bring
so
it on
that you know
a
it's what's in your binder in front of you, okay?
Yep.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, so we'll start on slide 23, which is the budget timetable. We've got the same numbers, right? Okay, great. So every year we start our budget, we start with a 5-year forecast and so on, but we take a first draft of the budget to our board in September. We work on implementing any direction from the board between then and January, and we can bring back further drafts as required by the board. This year, the first draft was a pretty straightforward budget, and the board didn't really suggest significant changes. So the second draft is coming to the board this Friday on January 27th. and it will be approved by the board at the last meeting in February. That would be February 24th, our annual general meeting. 30 days prior to that, we always send out notification to municipalities, to participating municipalities, of the budget vote and the amount of the levy and a copy of the draft budget. That just went out in the last few days, and the numbers are slightly different than the numbers in this package, just because we're now closing our year end. We know that maybe some of the capital projects didn't get completed and they're moving over to the next year. No significant changes and no change to levy, but there's always a few timing changes at year end. And I'll highlight the differences as I go through these slides. So slide number 24 says that our budget in 2017 is $29.4 million compared to $31 million in 2016. The draft that's going to board is higher. It's actually $30.7 million, so almost exactly the same as last year. And the $1 million additional spending is all capital and special projects. Special projects have 100% funding from third parties, so they're just money in and out. Things like Canada 150 infrastructure grants and things like that. We couldn't complete some of that work for a variety of reasons in the year, and that's just moving over. So basically a flat budget. Slide 25 shows the per capita levy over the last 10 years or so. So the total levy of $11,075,000, when you divide that by the population, it's about $10.60 per person in the watershed, compared to about $10.49 last year. And you can see the trend over the last few years. The next slide, number 26, breaks the revenue down by the main sources. The three large sources are self-generated revenues. It shows 48% in that pie chart, which is $14.1 million of our incoming revenues from self-generated sources. That would be things like the user fees in the parks, which are about half of that. School board contributions to our nature center program, various other user fees for planning and permits and so on. Also donations, and that number is actually going in the next draft, or the current draft, it's going a little higher, from 14.1 million to 14.5, and the $400,000 additional money is mostly donations that are coming in for some work we're doing funded by our foundation. On the right-hand side of that, the municipal levy shows 38%. It's now going to be down to 37% just because our overall budget's a little higher. That's the $11 million I spoke of a minute ago. That's 2.5% higher than last year overall. And then the third largest category, the government grants, the bottom right of the pie, $3.4 million, which is down from the previous year, although our next draft is increasing that back up to about $4 million for some of the things I just mentioned earlier. If we go to slide 27, really I shouldn't spend time on that one because it's basically the summary of what I just said. So maybe we'll go to slide 28, which is breaking down the expenditures by our main categories. We generally describe our budget with three pieces of the pie. The large, it's blue, but I think you have black and white copies, but the large piece, 83%, at the bottom of that chart is your base operating budget. So no capital, no special one-time things. That's our ongoing programs and services that we deliver year after year. There's no change at all in the basic services we're providing this coming year. We'll be spending $24.4 million, which is about 1% higher than the year before to deliver the regular day-to-day programs. The two pieces of the pie chart at the top, on the left you'll see the base programs, the capital budget, about 9% of our spending. That's about $2.6 million, and about $2 million of that is being spent on either our water control structures or our flood forecasting and warning system, and the remainder, about $600,000, is being spent in our parks. The park capital is budgeted to be paid for through user fees from the park customers. And then the top 8% special projects. Those are the things I've spoken of a few times where we get a special one-time grant to do something, whether it's a study or whether it's a Canada 150 project or something, and we flow that through and do work. And we separate it from the rest of the budget because those things come and go and they don't have a long-term impact and they're not funded with any municipal levy. Slide 31, it lists the types of things that are included in the special projects part of our budget, the $2.4 million. You can see there's various studies and things that all have unique funding. Slide 32, we thought we would include this year because we've been asked the last few years about the special agreement with the City of Hamilton for allocating our general levy. And I've spoken to this with you in the past, so I don't have to get too deep into it unless you have questions. But basically, the Conservation Authorities Act allows us to allocate general levy based on the portion that your assessment is of the total assessment for our watershed. And we knew when the city amalgamated that that was going to change things drastically because the M&R formula, they don't know really what the assessment is in our watershed, so they just use the geographic area of our watershed. And you'll see in those percentages that the city of Hamilton, geographically, 21% of it is in our watershed. But if you look at the actual roll numbers, which we did through a detailed study using GIS information, we know that the, I'm sorry, I read Niagara's number. The Grand River was, by geographic area, was 19%. But if we look at the actual roll numbers, there's about 5% of the assessment really lands in our watershed because the urban part of the city is not in our watershed. So we knew that something was going to be wrong when that formula was, or when the amalgamation took place about 15 years ago. And we worked together to all four authorities in the city to agree that we would use roll numbers, or our best estimate based on roll numbers, and use those numbers in the right-hand column. The impact on the Grand meant that the assessment that went to the assessment that was allocated from Hamilton went from 19 to 5%. So the levy was going to be $263,000 in today's dollars compared to about $993 if we went with that geographic area. We continue to follow that formula. I believe 3 of the conservation authorities that bill you follow that special agreement, and the rest, I think, is being heard by the Mining and Lands Commissioner sometimes. I'm sure you know all about that.
That's a whole other conversation.
Yeah, but I always feel like we should summarize how we do it and
I appreciate that.
Reassure you that we're following the special agreement. Anyway, the last page 33, is just a breakdown of the levy using that formula we just spoke of. And even though the levy is going up by 2.5% overall, every municipality has a slightly different number because the assessment changes individually. The City of Hamilton in 2017, the levy will be $263,512, which is 2.7% higher than last year. So with that, we'd be pleased to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Keith. We do appreciate the cooperation and the good relationship we have with at least 3 of the conservation authorities and your due diligence to look after our city as well. I have Councillor Pearson, please.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor Keith. Thank you very much for the presentation and certainly simplifying it as walking us through the slides. Appreciate that. And I also appreciate the overview and just the sort of reinforcement as far as the general levy agreements that you're standing by with the City of Hamilton. So the increase that you're asking for Hamilton is 2.4%, correct?
2.7?
2.7? Okay, it's at the top here. All righty. Just wanted to be sure. Thank you. And you mentioned the amount, the dollar amount, 263,000.
512.
Is it 500 and, I'm sorry?
263,512, I think, is in the chart.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
Oh, I see, it's down here. Thank you. I just wanted to verify that. And one other question. You mentioned your issue with the emerald ash borer that we've all had to deal with. So how are things going? I know in the last presentation they mentioned 2,500 trees have been removed in Halton. How is it going? And costs, what are you looking at? Because it's been a huge, huge impact everywhere in North America.
Yes, through you, Madam Deputy Mayor. We budget about $400,000 to $500,000 a year for our hazard tree program, and we've been able to deal with the problem up until now with that. We do have a substantive reserve, and we're taking a report to our board this week, asking them to approve a request to the minister to use our reserves to actually fund emerald ash borers. So our expected cost over the next 10 years is $4 to $5 million. So it's a big problem. We do have the reserves to deal with it. We have sought provincial support a number of times and not had any luck, but we are actually going to try to deal with this within our reserves rather than seeking extra funding from the municipalities. So.
Thank you. And just to that, I'm assuming that your areas have been hit just as hard as Hamilton, and I call them standing dead soldiers. So I'm sure you have a lot of standing dead soldiers that are very, very dangerous. I know personally I've had 13 of my own cut down last year, and it wasn't cheap. So so are you having to barricade some areas in the wooded areas so that there is to address any safety concerns?
Through you, Madam Deputy Mayor, what we've done is gone through a very intensive risk analysis process. So anywhere where there's cottage lots or campgrounds, we're very aggressively removing trees, standing trees that are live. In some of our backwoods areas, we're just that don't see a lot of population, we don't take the trees out. Eventually some will come out, but they're falling. But I would say we're using a risk-based approach where there's a potential target, we're taking the tree down.
Terrific. Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor.
All right, thank you, Councillor Pearson. And I have, excuse me, I have no other speakers, so a motion to receive, Councillor Vanderbeek and Councillor Green, all in favor? And that is carried. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Appreciate
and apologies for not bringing our slides along. We just, somehow I missed that.
Well, not a problem. We saved a tree at least because we do have it in front of us. So I appreciate that. I'm good, thanks. And next, we move on to 5.3, and that is the Hamilton Beach Rescue Unit. I'd like to call upon Chief Charlie Witherington to provide the presentation for the Hamilton Beach Rescue Unit. They're coming in the door as we speak. Good timing, gentlemen. Chief, welcome.
Welcome. Thank you. Sorry.
No problem. Whenever you're ready. And again, councillors, we have the presentation in our binder under 5.3.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Good morning, Madam Mayor, members of council, senior staff. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Charlie Witherington. I'm Chief of the Hamilton Beach Rescue Unit. I've been selected or designated to be the spokesperson for today's presentation. Also today with me, I have Acting Lieutenant Kevin Slowinski and a crew member, Jordan. Jordan. In this year's correspondence, we were asked to submit a request for 2017 with the ability to increase our funding request by 1.8%, which we have submitted. Over the years, the rescue unit has responded to many emergencies, are normal deployed and activated by the Hamilton Police, Hamilton EMS, Fire, and the Canadian Coast Guard from Trenton. Also in the past, the lift bridge at the Ship Canal has identified emergencies occurring in the lake, the canal, or in the bay. In 2016, our fundraising efforts and the assistance from the City of Hamilton capital funding, we were able to replace our aging limestone vessel with a new 25-foot Stanley vessel equipped with up-to-date navigation, electronics, twin 150 horsepower engines, as well as a trailer at a cost of over $140,000, which over $80,000 was from our fundraising efforts. We were also able to replace our rigid hull inflatable with a newer up-to-date version with a 90 horsepower and towing capabilities. We continue to work with the Hamilton Fire Dispatch, which includes weekly testing of our paging capabilities, our interoperative radio voice communications over the dedicated Trunking City radio system. In conjunction with working with Hamilton Fire, we've also increased our abilities to communicate with the Hamilton Police Marine Unit on the Trunking radio system as well. These are just a few of the calls that we've had over the last year. 5 overturned sailboats off of Spencer Smith Park, a joint call with Hamilton Fire for an overturned sailboats in the Hamilton Harbor, Mayday call with 5 people in the water off of Jordan Harbor, a joint call with Hamilton Fire for a surfer down off of Hutches, another joint call with Hamilton Fire for a hypothermic swimmer, and we've also had 2 paddle boarders in the water off of Spencer Smith Park as well. The Hamilton Beach Rescue Unit was mentioned in the Burlington Post on August 15th, 2016 for 2 paddle boarders who were in need of rescue. Hamilton Beach Rescue Unit is a volunteer Canadian Coast Guard vessel, reached the women in their early 30s first. Hamilton Beach got them just before the storm cell came through, 2 minutes later, noting that the inclement weather soon afterwards, the high winds and the rain would have pushed the women further out in the lake and made them much more difficult to locate. On May 28th and 29th, we were involved in a joint rescue operation or joint rescue exercise with the Canadian Coast Guard Auxiliary, CASERA, which is the Civil Air Search and Rescue, the Canadian Coast Guard, and the Department of National Defense. On October the 28th, the Hamilton Beach Rescue Unit participated in Navy exercises with the HMCS Star and was reported in the Spectator on October the 31st that they were liaisoning with the Auxiliary Coast Guard, said CHERM, and the scenario was that the enemy was trying to infiltrate the escorted friendly vessel. In July, we did a perimeter control for the Canada Day fireworks. In November and December, we participated in the Waterdown Stony Creek Christmas parades. A letter was received from J.P. Sharp, who is the Regional Supervisor, Maritime Search and Rescue, and the letter was sent to Jim Coolin of the Canadian Coast Guard Auxiliary and to the Hamilton Beach Rescue Unit, which reads as follows. I just want to let you know the dedicated work of the 3 of your units did this past weekend. As many of you may or may not have heard, we had a search off Friday night, all day Saturday for a missing boater in the lower western region of Lake Ontario. The Hamilton Beach Rescue, Gamaroo, and Tow Wharf played a major role in getting the area searched, demonstrated great professionalism and dedication to their work and the abilities to keep their vessels crewed for prolonged periods of time, and stamina that they showed by staying on the water for so long. Especially the Hamilton Beach Rescue Unit, who was able to provide the vessel for the search Friday night as well as all day Saturday. Please pass this appreciation on to the district directors as well as the unit leaders. In closing, the Hamilton Beach Rescue Unit respectfully requests consideration for our 2017 request in order to continue to serve the community and to help police, fire, and EMS in any emergency in the city. Thank you. And I have a video, a slide presentation, and then another video.
We look forward to that video every year. Please go ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. And that last sentence says it all. 24 hours a day, ready to keep us safe. I have no speakers on the list. Councillor Collins?
Yeah, I just want to thank Charlie and the rest of the members for all the good work they do in the community. I say this every year, and they continue to do good things in the beach community and for the municipality. Excuse me, for our municipality, both on land and in the water. And I really appreciate all their assistance, especially with dealing with some of the community issues I deal with in the beach community.
Yep.
So thank you for that, and I would be pleased to receive the report at the appropriate time.
All right, and thank you, Councillor Pearson, please.
Thank you, and I totally agree. Thank you again for the presentation, and certainly I also want to extend a thank you to all the staff that come out to the Spring Creek Santa Claus Parade and do a great sort of presentation of all the units that you can bring out and show the residents exactly what you're about.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Pearson. Councillor Whitehead, please.
As an active boater that spends a lot of time on the water, I can certainly appreciate the work and the commitment and dedication of the volunteers. I think what's even more inspiring is the smile on many of your volunteers' faces as they're performing their duties shows a real delight and dedication to the service they provide. And I certainly want you to pass on that it certainly be noted by this one, Councillor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And just a couple of comments from myself. Number one, thank you for coming out to the Water Down Parade, the only nighttime parade left in our area. And certainly our residents really look forward to it because, boy, do you light up those boats, and the decorations are terrific. But I think, more importantly, when you look at the visuals that are in that video, notwithstanding the great music, but the actual visuals in that video say a lot about the depth and breadth of the work that you and your volunteers do, and we're very blessed to have you, and I thank you very much for that. So, motion to receive the presentation. Thank you, Chief. Moved by Councillor Collins and seconded by Councillor Marula. All in favour? And that is carried. Thank you very much. And now we'll move on to 5.4, the Royal Botanical Gardens. And I'd like to call upon Mark Runciman, CAO, to provide the presentation. And again, that's in your binder under 5.4. Welcome, Mark.
Good morning, Deputy Mayor.
Whenever you're ready, sir.
Okay. Good morning, Deputy Mayor, members of council.
And Andrew as well.
Ladies and gentlemen, I was just going to say I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to present our plans to the committee here today. And as usual, I brought with me RBD's Director of Finance and Administration, Andrew Duncan. We've been very busy with our 2017 business plan and budget. And Andrew will assist me with any questions that you may have within our budget. Hopefully you've received a copy of it and the 2015 audited statements. We decided, since I was here in October giving you a presentation, that we didn't need to do another one this morning, so that we'd get right down into the details. But before I get into the budget discussion, as in the past, I would like to give a very brief overview of some of our activities. Although we've just started our 2016 audit, we anticipate another balanced budget, and this will represent the 11th year in a row that the organization has achieved positive financial results. This is an outcome of some very hard work by our board of directors, our dedicated staff, and volunteers. It is also a direct result of the ongoing support of our core funders, City of Hamilton, Halton Region, and the Province of Ontario for investing in us for many, many years. 2016 was the second year of RBG's strategic plan, and the management team developed plans to see our attendance numbers and revenues grow, which we achieved in most areas. We continue to pursue awareness initiatives throughout the year, which helped support our variety of mandated activities. Overall, we had a very good year with paid attendance revenues increasing by almost 9%, and our self-generated revenues increased by almost 10%, which equates to approximately $680,000. And based on the year-end forecast prepared in November, this represents 58% of our annual operating budget. As in previous years, we are very proud of these accomplishments. And that said, we need to take RBG to the next level, and we need to invest in certain areas to take us there. Although our reserves are there to support such activities, we would prefer not to touch them. As reported many times in the past, RBG is a very lean operation that depends on the hard work and efforts of our staff and considerable volunteer assistance in many areas of the operation. Close to 50,000 collective volunteer hours take place every year. All of this has led us to the stabilizing of the organization, and in saying this, there remains a gap between revenues and expenses. We need to use the momentum that we have created over the past to move the organization forward. The goal is to grow our reserves. We need them to live off of, to deal with deferred maintenance, and to develop new projects or products down the road. If we continue to access our reserves like we are doing now, they will not be available for future years. Our plan is to continue to obtain balanced budgets while RBG completes the goals and objectives of our strategic plan that ends in 2019. As usual, Royal Botanical Gardens hosted many activities in 2016. We had our 8th winter exhibit entitled Reptile Rendezvous throughout RBG Centre, which proved to be very popular. The 2017 exhibit, which just opened this past weekend, is called Big Freeze, and it runs until April 17th, 2017. Don't miss this winter's coolest exhibit. The Big Freeze brings the Ice Age story home to RBG with a display of mammoths and mastodon remains that have been recovered in the local area, and artwork that provides a glimpse into the formation of the landscapes of RBG and the environment we see today. We experienced good bloom periods and held wonderful festivals in the garden areas. We continue to make significant improvements to our natural lands and to the 20-plus kilometers of trails while performing ongoing marsh restoration efforts. Our educational programming and conservation efforts continue to be some of the most respected around. Of course, one of our biggest events that took place was the reopening of our iconic rock garden following a major renovation. Although we had one of the hottest summers in history, many people came out to enjoy one of the most breathtaking spots anywhere, and it's right here in Hamilton. It is where Royal Botanical Gardens began as part of the City of Hamilton's Parks Board in the early 1930s. Good work continues in the Coots to Escarpment Eco Park system, which RBG has taken the lead on as a result of Greenbelt and Trillium funding. This initiative has been ongoing for 11 years and continues to garner support throughout the region as we work together to maintain the public's green spaces for the enjoyment of future generations. It has been a pleasure to work with the parties in this initiative and to see real progress in property acquisitions and other initiatives. The City of Hamilton has played a significant role in this, which we certainly appreciate. And RBG looks forward to celebrating and major fundraising activities taking place this year, circling around the Coots to Escarpment Eco Park system. RBG membership sales are up 19% over 2015. This represents some 2,200 new members, bringing us to 16,545 members at RBG, which is quite significant. The Ministry of Tourism, Culture and Sport has recently assisted in the capital maintenance projects with the provision of capital funds. Some $2 million will be spent this year on modifications and improvements to our facilities. We're also working with the Ministry of Tourism, Culture and Sport in putting on many 150 celebrations. Too many to list here today, but one is called Nature Connects, which are individual sculptures made out of Lego. This will take place this summer. On June 19th through the 23rd, RBG is hosting the American Public Gardens Association annual conference, which brings between 800 and 1,000 registrants from around North America and these are professionals in the botanical garden arboretum field, and we're very excited to bring them to the city. RBG's transformation continues to evolve. We continue to do the best we can with limited resources, but the reality is RBG needs to raise additional revenues. As mentioned earlier, we have recently embarked on a long-term strategic plan where financial sustainability will be the main focus. This exercise is critical for the long-term success of Royal Botanical Gardens, and it will generate some exciting and bold ideas. RBG continues to review its significant programs as we strive to achieve efficiencies, maintain our properties, provide desirable visitor experiences, invest in revenue-generating and value-added activities, all while meeting a very diverse and important mandate for the people of the community the province of Ontario, and beyond. As a major cultural attraction in the region, RBG plays a key role in improving the quality of life, increasing pride and economic growth in our community. As mentioned earlier, Andrew and I were here in October making a presentation to the General Issues Committee where we discussed the economic, social, and environmental impacts that Royal Botanical Gardens has for this city. I had the pleasure to watch a beautifully produced video just yesterday by Tourism Hamilton called Secrets Out. I assume you've all seen it, but I'd like to congratulate them on an exciting initiative. I might add that RBG's Hamilton properties are shown about 17 times in the 3-minute video. We will continue to work hard on promoting RBG and this community as a tourist destination through our own efforts and those of Tourism Hamilton. Royal Botanical Gardens Board of Directors are very committed to our success and have worked extremely hard in helping the organization to succeed. The board will continue to work with RBG's management to further develop plans and performance indicators and will continue to monitor their implementation and results. Fundraising is a vital component of our operation. The success of our $20 million capital campaign at the Rock Garden, which saw local philanthropists and corporations come out to support RBG, will be used as leverage for future fundraising initiatives. In saying this, many donors ask about the ongoing support of our core funders, as this is very important to them. And moving forward in 2017, our budget responds to the ever-increasing costs, and RBG has worked hard at generating our own revenues, as I've mentioned earlier. The budget will continue to include more move forward initiatives that relate to our sustainability as outlined in our multi-year strategy. We are only forecasting conservative growth in 2017. But in saying that, if you look at the big numbers on revenues and expenses, there is a jump, and that jump is a result of grants that we've obtained to help put on Ontario 150 celebrations in the year 2017. Art in the Gardens will continue to play an important role at RBG as our partner, Mr. Dan Lowry, expands the International Sculpture Garden. We continue to be more customer focused as we aim to provide a high-quality tourism and cultural experience. Now, regarding our budget, what you have in front of you is the budget that we submitted to your staff. Our Board of Directors approved the budget in December. Our Ministry of Tourism, Culture and Sport is currently reviewing it, and we will forward to you the final approved version as soon as possible. We have complied with the wishes of our core funders, the City of Hamilton, Halton Region, and the Ministry regarding our annual budget, in this case, the 1.8% increase. As most of you know, I brought a proposal forward last year that was to increase Hamilton's contribution to match that of Halton Region. This was not well received. We have been working with your staff as suggested to look at creative and different ways to close this gap. This will continue in 2017. We are here today to thank you for the ongoing support the City of Hamilton provides us, and we are anxious to find some solutions to the situation. Thank you again for your support, for your time here this morning. And yes, if any of you would like a tour, please let me know. We'll make sure it happens. And please look us up on our website, rbg.ca, and just see the many, many things that are taking place at this wonderful organization. So if there's any questions, I'll try to answer them.
Thank you very much, Mark. And Andrew, thank you for coming in. We appreciate it. I don't have any questioners on the list at this time, but I also want to thank you very much for the ongoing good work that you do to, just continue to do wonderful, wonderful things for our community, Hamilton and for Burlington as well. And,
thank you.
I spent a lot of time in your trails and your buildings, and it's just terrific. So I thank you very much for that. Councillor Pearson, did you want to receive, or did you want to have a comment?
Receive, and thank you, Mark, again, and Andrew. Excellent.
Okay, thank you. Motion to receive. Councillor Pearson, Councillor Connolly, all in favour? That is carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Moving on to 5.5, Hamilton Region Conservation Authority. And I'd like to call Lisa Burnside, Director of Human Resources, and Neil McDougall, Secretary and Treasurer, to the podium, please. Are they here? Okay. Welcome.
Good morning, Madam Deputy Mayor.
You're not Lisa.
No, I'm not. And I would like to make a little change up in the batting order today and
No problem.
make the introductions, if I may.
Yes, you may.
Well, thank
Carry
you for
on.
the opportunity to present our 2017 operating budget. Good morning, members of council and members of our board. Neil McDougall is going to be doing the heavy lifting today. He's going to do a division-by-division presentation. I'll remain here with Neil in case there's some difficult questions towards the end of our term here. And with that, Neil, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Just for everybody in the room, could you please introduce yourself?
Oh, pardon me. I'm Chris Firth-Eagland, the Chief Administrative Officer for the Hamilton Conservation Authority for about another 10 days. And thank you for that reminder, Madam Mayor. I have Scott Peck, our Director of Watershed Planning and Engineering, and Elisa Burnside, our Director of Human Resources and Education Services, here with us today to participate as well.
Thank you, Chris.
for that.
Most of us know who you are, but just for everybody else in the audience, so I do appreciate that. Neil, whenever you're ready, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry. Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, councillors. My presentation today is a presentation that we brought forward to our board last October and was approved, but it was well received and thought that it really does capture the essence of what we're intending to do in the coming year. So just quickly through the agenda, you'll see that we start our planning process by establishing the goals, identifying the resources that we have in both staffing and fleet, and then moving into the divisions. So the goals that we had to begin this budget was to support the HCA mandate, operate on a cash neutral or positive basis if possible, and to require no greater levy than the council approved. And happy to say that we did accomplish that.
Excellent.
Isn't that odd? I was flipping the screens and it wasn't coming up in my binder because I wasn't doing it. So to support the HCA mandate, go back to our basic vision, mission, and strategic plan. And that's where you see that our vision is to achieve a balance in the human and nature and the protection of both, recognizing decisions today affect generations in the future. Our mission is to be a leader. We want to show as an example of how we want our area to be. And then the strategic plan. We have a strategic plan, as other authorities have mentioned this morning, 4-year plan, which we are now entering the second half of. It's 14 to 18. Now, part of the strategic plan, we address 5 different areas. There's the water management area, where we take into account the safety of human, animal life, and property. And this is the area that the province actually supports financially the strongest. We have the natural heritage conservation area natural heritage conservation, where we protect through ownership and education. In the last couple of years, we have expanded our holdings considerably to that end. And then we have the conservation area experiences, where we want to make nature attractive and accessible so that people who live in the cities can come out and experience nature. And we want to do this with a safe environment on our managed trail systems. Then we have education and environmental awareness, as all authorities do. We have an active school program, and we work with others to make this accessible to all school children. And we have worked with our foundation to actually, we receive donations to supplement the cost of transportation, which is something that's been very helpful in getting all school children out to see us. And then we have organizational excellence as one of our goals, and this is a 2-part. I call it 1 and 1A. 1 is the financial sustainability, and the second is from a human resource side, that we want to be an attractive place to work, and we want to be a place that people will come and experience good careers. Now, operating on a cash neutral or positive basis is a bit of a challenge. We have self-generated commercial sales from our conservation areas. We do receive corporate grants, federal grants, provincial grants, and individual donations, and we appreciate all of those. We have the special levies that come from the city when we have a specific project which we're working on, and then we have the municipal levy, which we will be talking about this morning. Our expenses, well, being a combination of salaries, wages, fleets, facilities, and third-party contracting, the majority is within our staff. We use a base complement, and then we add as needed when we have projects which are funded primarily through the grant structure, so that we always stay at a lean level and are able to that way accept when their grants are coming and when they're not. And then the final cost to us on a cash basis is repayment of the loan principal and interest. Now we do have we had 3 loans at the start of last year, and now we only have 2 because we reached the completion of the Marina Wall loan, which was helpful when we go into this year's budget because that freed up money that we didn't have to earmark for loan payments. Now, just the financial summary on a division basis, you can see the 14 and 15, we basically had a cash flow. One year was positive, one year was a little negative, but the net of the two was to the positive. We budgeted last year for a break even, and we're just pulling the numbers together now, and I have no reason to believe that we won't be at a break even or slightly positive. Has been mentioned earlier, we've had a couple of very nice summers, and the summers do help, but there's a cautionary tale to that we've ran into this past summer, is that when it was so dry, we ended up having a fire ban up at Valence, which did affect our camping, because if you can't have a campfire, one of the attractions of camping has gone away. Also, we always check the lakes to make sure that it's safe for swimming, and when you don't have a lot of rain and a lot of water movement, you can run into some problems that way. And we did have a few more postings this year than in the past, which again will affect our day use. Now, we set as one of our goals to require no greater levy increase than council approved, and we were advised on the 29th that it was to be 1.8%, and that was what we incorporated into our budget. The total levy increase, total levy request is $4,326,972. That is an increase of $76,472. 13,000 of that comes from the township of Pushland, which has a small corner of our watershed. Now, staffing levels. We have a total full-time staff of between 88 and 90. This costs $5.8 million excluding benefits. When we bring in our casual staff, we have a total payroll of $8 million. Now, this is total labor. Some of that labor is designated to Confederation Beach Park. Some of that labor is dedicated to construction and special maintenance projects, which are outside of this budget. But just to give you an idea of the total number of people and monies that we manage. The full-time staff at HCA is 84, cost of $5.4 million, and as I am sure you're all well aware, one of the big costs that we're facing is the benefit cost. Seasonal costs, which used to be fairly low, is now crept up to 17% by the time you pull together the CPP, employment insurance, health tax, WSIB, and base vacation. And then when we're looking at full-time, we make a savings on the employment insurance rate, but that's because we offer a health care program for health, dental, drug plans, that sort of thing. And then we have the pension costs, which push that cost up to 23%. So if you're hiring somebody for $50,000, you're really bringing on a 62.5 kind of rate, just in round numbers. Now, the way we get all our work done is we have a fleet. We operate centrally, and what that means is that fleet operations has all the vehicles under their domain. We then rent them out to the various areas, and in exchange for a rental fee, we provide all of the maintenance, fuel to keep them operational and keep the operators in the parks and in the WP&E staff, have them doing their jobs, and we take care of the mechanical side. We have some heavy equipment as well, and we have a range of ancillary wagons, mowers, boats, because we have lakes, and all of this is what we are required to have in order to accomplish the work that we set out to do. Now, the first division, Watershed Planning and Engineering, full-time staff numbers 16. Now, they have 4 primary activities: the regulations and permitting, which everyone is aware of, flood forecasting, flood control and oversight of our flood facilities, stewardship to inform and educate, and then we have project work. Now, one thing I'd mention that I haven't mentioned here before is really just to give you a better description of the flood control facilities which we have. We have 2 primary ones, the Valens Lake Dam, which is 21 feet high and 400 feet across, and we have the Christie Lake Dam, which is 50% higher at 30 feet and 50% further across at 600 feet. The storage here, which is the area that's covered, 270 acres and 400 acres, and the storage area, which I have a hard time really visualizing what an acre foot is, but that's how it's measured in 16 and 1800 respectively. Now, the WP&E financials, they are always at set to break even. We apportion the levy sufficient to cover the cost primarily of staff, and you will see various ranges in numbers year to year, and that's the result of project work. When we have projects, as I mentioned before, mostly our staff will provide some supervisory oversight, but the project will be done by third-party contractors, consultants, so that when the project is done, they go away and we don't have any lingering sort of hangover of people looking for something to do. So we keep our core very lean, and we supplement as these projects come along, supported by grants and donations. Our fees have been fairly consistent over the past few years, around the $300,000 mark. We did a little bit better this year than the budget, but not enough to make us feel that that would be necessary to move next year's budget. Now, the conservation areas, full-time staff here, 24. Now, as I mentioned, we've got 4 major divisions. We've got the Valens Lake to the northwest, Christie Lake, and Valens Lake is our primary camping. Christie Lake is our primary events park. Dundas Valley is and Hamilton Mountain are primarily our passive parks. And then we have 50 Point, which has camping but is known most for its marina operations. Now, the properties that overall, collectively, we are now at 10,978 acres. We've always talked about approximately 11,000, but that was giving us license to round up. Now we can actually say 10,978, so it's pretty much 11,000. 14 Niagara escarpment properties, 25 waterfalls, the marina, 2 recreational lakes, 145 kilometers of park and rail trails, 12 significant wetlands, an ecological preserve, and an 18,000-year-old muskeg bog. Now, the self-generated revenue from admissions, camping, and marina fees are sufficient to cover the costs that are attributed to the conservation areas, excluding the central costs that I'll talk about later. But what you have here is we have almost $5 million that comes from third-party admissions, being the as I mentioned, admissions, related concessions, our events, and film shoots, which are becoming a key part of the annual revenues that we receive at the various parks. Expenses, you see, mostly are in our staffing, which is the same throughout. We don't spend much on material things. We just invest our money in the people, and as we've gone through the years, we naturalize more, which allows us to, reduce the need for fuels and equipment and that sort of thing. So we have this. We have a pass program in place, which helps us when we want to weatherproof in the event we should have a wet summer, which we haven't for the last couple of years. But even that is, it might be $500,000, and we're looking at protecting $5 million. So we don't have that much in the way of protection, which is why we always try to keep things lean. We work on a tight budget. When we're putting together our budgets for the upcoming year, we don't take the approach that last year was a great year, so next year is going to be even better. We just say, thank you, Lord, for a great year last year, and we're going to assume an average for next year. So all of these are, I'm not going to say they're conservative estimates. I believe they're realistic estimates, because there will be an ebb and flow with the weather, and so it's best to be cautious rather than overextend. Now we have Westfield Heritage Village. Now I can really say we have Westfield Heritage Village because the actual ownership was moved over to the HCA in 2016. So we are now the proud owners of a living museum, still supported by the city, and we appreciate that through the levy, because, as you know, museums are not the type of a outfit that can really carry its own weight completely on through admissions and visitorship. Now, along with the acquisition of the village itself, we're very happy to receive some land again from the city, which is adjacent to the village. And then we supplemented that with a couple of private purchases from owners in the area, so that now we have a critical mass to really establish a Westfield conservation area, to the point that we'll be able to make it a full-service conservation area, developing trails, developing. One of the visions that Chris had mentioned was cross-country skiing, but as long as things continue to be at plus 5 degrees, that's going to be a little bit tough. But as I say, weather will ebb and flow. Up at Westfield, as you know, it has a school programming function, and they too have been the source of many film shoots. The Murdoch Mysteries have gone up there, just to name one. Now their financials, as you can see, the levy is the key portion, but events are very important to Westfield, and events are very subject to weather. We had in 2013 we had a December ice storm which wiped out the 3 weekends of Christmas, so that hurt 13. In 2014 it was kind of a cold and miserable spring, which really affected the March break and the maple syrup program. So when you've got these events that hinge on specific times of year, it would be if we had an ice cream festival and it was pouring rain. Well, that's going to hurt August revenues, because that is the key event for the month. So, well, we do try our best, and the people up there are working really hard every day trying to get new and innovative ways to bring people out. Weather plays a role there, as it does with all of our holdings. Now, the one other thing I'll mention here, which is kind of unique, is you'll see in 2014, 2015, we had management fees, because that was when ownership still resided with the city, and we were paid a stipend to operate. Now that management fee is gone, and it needs to be replaced by the surplus from the operations in order for HCA proper, if you will, to remain whole. So that's why you see that there didn't used to be earnings in 14 and 15, but now there is, It's just an exchange of the management fee for the operating surplus, with more onus on us now to make sure that things do come together properly, whereas before on the management fee it was driven by the expenses, whereas now revenues play a huge role. The final division is corporate and central services. There's 39 people here that oversee the whole operation and provide general oversight through administration, through Chris, and finance, treasury, operations like banking. Marketing is done centrally. Human resources is central. The outdoor education comes in this area. Foundation administration comes in this area. Our capital design team, which handles all the special maintenance and capital projects, ensures that we have everything designed properly and proper permits secured. And we also run the fleet and forestry centrally. Now, the construction and trades primarily are charged out to various jobs, but as you know, you have training times, and there needs to be a home for all the non-tool time, we call it, and that comes back into the corporate and central services as well. Also, one thing that makes our numbers fluctuate quite substantially year to year on an operational basis, not on the external audit statements that you'll see, but operationally we have land acquisitions flow through the corporate area. So when we receive donations from the city, from Heritage Green, from various places. That comes in as a revenue, and then when we actually buy the land, it goes out as an expense, so that we end up with a net zero in the transaction, but we need to be able to show it somewhere, and it does cause as you can see in 2014 to 2015, the other, which is where our land acquisition flows through, fluctuates from 1.3 million to 5.3 million. And we don't plan for that in our budgeting years, because what we have is we don't buy land unless we have the money. If it's supported by, like in the case of the East Mountain, we had a purse set up from the city and Heritage Green combined. We have other foundation supports us in acquiring land. And this past year, we actually were the beneficiary of a bequeathment, which was almost $1 million from a very generous soul who left it for us with the intention of acquiring further land, so that generations forward would have the enjoyment, which was we were very thankful for that kind of a donation. As I mentioned, loan payments, we did have 3 loans. The Marina Wall loan, which was originally a $900,000 loan at 5%. It was a 10-year loan, and the last payment was made on April 30th, 2016. We have 2 other loans. The Veldhuis, which is now called Canal Park, that was actually just opened this past year as well. We loaned $440,000 from the city in order to acquire the land, and it's a 10-year zero interest loan, and that will be completed in the 2020 fiscal year. And then we also had a pension deficit loan, this $1.5 million loan. This was the loan that we took out when we converted from a defined benefit plan, which was just we found too expensive and heading the wrong way, as I'm sure you've heard a lot of companies have had the same issue. In order to settle up our obligations, we took a one-time loan of $1.5 million, and it is in existence. It was another 10-year loan, 4.25%, and we'll complete its payments in 2021. Now, that's the end of the HCA proper, but I did want to mention Confederation Beach Park, just a couple things. First of all, I mean, you people know it's a City of Hamilton property, and we've been commissioned to manage it. We receive a management fee of around $400,000 per year. It fluctuates as it is a percentage of expenses. And the management agreement that we had 5 years ago was a 3-year agreement with 2 one-year options, so that has come to completion as of past December 31st. We are currently working with a group in Public Works to do another longer-term agreement, as it's found it's beneficial for both sides. And so we hope to have that done certainly before the season gets going too much longer. Now, 2015 and 2016 have been incredible from a financial perspective, best in recent history. And this is something where it's when it's really hot, you know, sometimes it's too hot to go camping or too hot to go to a beach, but it's never too hot to go to the water park and go on the slides and everything else. So it has been quite amazing. And I'll jump right to the commercial operations. And this is probably the single most telling part of weather. At one time I was, because marketing reports to me, I was told I wasn't doing a good job when my marketing, when there's only 87,000 people came out in 2014. But all of a sudden I got real smart, because the next year I managed to bump up attendance by 50%. I don't think it was all myself and the marketing group. Weather had a lot to do with it. And again, this past year, another perfect year, nothing but sunshine, and we received 145,946 people through the turnstiles. That's amazing. But 2014 at 87 and 2013, which was 95, I believe, isn't that far away that we can forget that it's just as easy to go back the other way, because you have one rainy weekend, if it happens to be a long weekend, that really cuts into your overall revenue. So we always plan on the basis of commercial operations, and this is something we just instituted in the last couple of years to get a handle on how much does it cost to run the passive park, which now there is no gate fee, it's open to everyone, it's run like other city parks. And there's commercial operations, which is Wild Waterworks and the tenants along Van Wagner's Road, like Barangas and Hutch's, Adventure Village. We have the sandbox for beach volleyball, and we actually have added the ball hockey, which will be up and running soon. So those commercial combined with Wild Waterworks, our intent is for them to break even. If we have a good year, as you can see in 2015, we had a profit of $372,000. I expect similar numbers for 2016. But it just as easily, it could flip the other way. Now on the, if we flip back to, right back to the start, because I kind of got ahead of myself here, but this is operated by 6 full-time people, and it's all supplemented by casual staff, both in the parks cutting grass in the summer when we need it, and the lifeguards and all the attendants at the concession stands in Wild Waterworks. Again, when we operate in there, they have a 70-day season, but because there's so much training required, we bring them on in early May so that they they help us spruce up the park and get everything ready to go. Now on the passive park operations, the deal which was arranged with Public Works was that for $650,000 of Public Works money, we would be able to keep the passive operations and Lakeland operating at a break even. So that's how we established that budget. And with the, as I said, with our commercial operations, we started this at the perfect time because we have established a reserve as a result of the last 2 years, and that'll help us when we do have a wet season, or if there's something special that comes along that needs more work in the capital side or special maintenance side, because we don't have a lot of money allocated there, and we do have competition coming online this next year. One of the other things that was very helpful to us was the timing of Wild Waterworks, which is a water park up in Brampton, which has been closed the last 2 summers. And so when the weather was the best, they weren't around. Based on their website, which I looked at just yesterday, they're coming out under new management in 2017, and they boast $25 million of improvements in slides and rides. So obviously there will be some curiosity, and we fully expect that we will take a hit just from the curiosity factor until we find out whether or not it really is, a good place to go. But that's something that you probably end up discussing more through the Public Works budget, but because I guess we're one of the people that's closest to it, I thought I'd mention it today just because we are close to it, and also because we do receive $400,000 in management fees for the operation of the park on your behalf. So that, Madam Chair, is the end of my presentation. Chris and I will be happy to take questions.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And I do have Councillors Jackson, Councillor Conley, and Councillor Brenda Johnson. Councillor Jackson, please.
Thanks, Madam Deputy Mayor. Neil, thank you so much. Very thorough presentation, as usual, and it's the HCA is very lucky to have you as a treasurer. Madam Deputy Mayor, I've got a series of questions since it's been a while since I've been on the Conservation Authority Board, and also the fact that none of my colleagues who are on the board talk to me anymore about what's going on the board. So I just, forgive me, Chris and Neil, if I have to ask a few questions just to bring my constituents up to speed. But by the way, Madam Deputy Mayor, before I do, a couple of other comments. I want to recognize the presence of Vice Chair Santina Mocchio, who I know probably thought the normal time was 11:45, and we've been about a half hour, 45 minutes ahead of schedule for the presentation. So I know she's got a normal regular daytime job that brings in the income, but she volunteers wonderfully, and I appreciate her contribution. And Madam Deputy Mayor, I've been told that I cannot offer praise, I cannot gush over the outgoing CEO, Christopher Thieglin, and talk about his wonderful talents and experience and how much we're going to miss his preservation of all good things conservation. So I won't even mention any of that, Madam Deputy Mayor. So thank you.
But you will, yeah.
Okay, so questions through you to Neil and to Chris. Chris, I'd love to someday, I know Niagara's next, I'd love to someday bring Bimbrook under the domain of Hamilton, because it just makes sense, part of the amalgamated city of the city of Hamilton. Theoretically, hypothetically, Madam Deputy Mayor, is that possible, or does that require cooperation, legislative change? I'm not asking you to delve into any political debate whatsoever. I mean this sincerely. It just makes sense, obviously, geographically, and within the whole city of Hamilton, especially since amalgamation, Bimbrook just seems like it's ours. It is residentially, development-wise, community-wise, and it just seems that this lovely conservation area would be a natural part of Hamilton. Madam Deputy Mayor, through to Chris for a comment.
Chris, please.
Madam Deputy Chair, that is a very intriguing inquiry. With cooperation and legislative change, it is feasible. The Conservation Authority Act allows for amendments of boundaries and things of that nature. It is feasible. It would take a great deal of collaboration, cooperation, amendment of staffing and budgets and things of that nature, but technically it could be done.
Thank you for your genuine reply, Chris. Chris, Neil, total of 11,000 acres you look after in all the conservation lands across our city. So your request is you get about 3.8. You're requesting about 3.8 million from us this year. What's your total budget, Neil? Did I miss that somewhere? In other words, what's your global budget, Madam Deputy Mayor, through to Neil, or are we the 100% funder?
No.
Neil, please.
Our total expenses are slightly over $12 million.
12 million.
Yeah, and our total levy request is $4,263,000, which is a combination of the base HCA and Westfield. I think that's the piece that you may have been missing. So it's about 35% levy, 65% coming from our conservation areas and grants.
That's what I was looking for. So about 35% of your total 12 million, all locations factored in, including Westfield, About 35% comes from Hamilton. So would we be the largest funder overall, Madam Deputy Mayor, through to Chris O'Neill?
Yes, Puslitz gets the silver medal at 13,000.
Okay, thank you. Next, Madam Deputy Mayor, status of the East Mountain Trail Loop. I can see from time to time when I visit all the good things happening from Albion Falls, from the trail through the East Mountain area, the bridge over the link, all the way over to Felker Falls, Upper Stony Creek. Maybe just a quick update as to all completed, still some works in progress, Madam Deputy Mayor, through you.
Chris, an update, please.
Thank you, Madam. The Hamilton Conservation Authority capital investment in that 9-kilometer trail loop is complete. There are a couple of sections still waiting a little assistance from Public Works to bring the whole thing up to an equivalently paved standard, but the whole loop is functional, and you did pick a good one. It's brilliant. It's a real tremendous feature.
Terrific, Chris. Thank you. How about the Karst Cave project within that overall East Mountain area off Upper Mount Albion Road, Madam Deputy Mayor? Pretty well, I recall 5, 6, 7 years ago when it was developed and when we acquired the land. It was the first new area of land, acreage, I think for 50 years that the HCA acquired. All opened up, parking lot, everything developed to the extent we want to. Or in light of the Upper Red Hill Valley Parkway that's just opened a few months ago, are there additional lands, feeder lands that we're still working on? Through you, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Chris?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. That we have wrapped up the acquisition of lands. The feeder lands have been amalgamated in. The property's rather contained, so its opportunity to expand physically is not really there. We did get an additional parcel of property on Highland Road, and thank you to the assistance of Councillor Conley, we received some funds to turn it into a new gateway for citizens on that part of the property. We exchanged the Griffin House with the City of Hamilton for those lands. It was a tit for tat, so to speak, land exchange, and it will serve the citizens at the Aramosa Karst quite well. We have some more trail initiatives going on, and we work very extensively with the Friends of Aramosa Karst, the FOTEC group, and they've been doing hedge projects and planting initiatives and things of that nature. And with funding assistance from Heritage Green Community Trust, I expect those types of community engagement initiatives to continue robustly for a number of years.
Terrific, Chris. Wonderful. Good to hear. Very encouraging to hear. Madam Deputy Mayor, a couple more questions. NEC versus HCA versus city planning. Does one body override another? I won't get into any specific locations, Chris, but does one have jurisprudence over the other, even though one of those three may want to do something and with their board's approval or council approval want to move ahead on a site, but could the other one potentially kibosh or put a halt? Or help me understand the process when city planning, NEC, and yourselves are involved on a matter. Through you, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Chris, please.
Madam, higher levels of government, generally speaking, hold the hammer, if I could. While our legislative and landowning opportunities provide us opportunities to work collaboratively, we do not have the final say on changes of land use within the Niagara Escarpment Commission's precinct. Planning at the City of Hamilton and the Hamilton Conservation Authority may in fact wish to see an amendment to a small piece of property, but ultimately it is the Niagara Escarpment Commission's final say as to whether or not they will allow amendments to their overriding plan.
Interesting. So that's where, in spite of the fact there might be support for disposition of property by HCA, the NEC may have the final say in whether or not it is approved or not. That's what I've heard you say.
Correct.
Okay, Chris. Last two questions, Madam Deputy Mayor. The Ontario Ball Hockey League, can you give us some, I think that's fairly new. Is it up and running at Confederation Park, Neil? And did you say it was a revenue generator, or is it basically a wash? Or help me understand, because it seems like we're adding some more over and above the Wild Waterworks traditionally. It seems to be we're adding more and more sport-themed type of amenities to the park. Through you, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Neil?
Yes, through you, Madam. Yes, that's exactly right. It's located right beside the beach volleyball. It is a leased arrangement, so Confederation Beach Park will be receiving additional revenues in the form of lease. I believe the construction should be nearing completion, and I expect that they'll want to be operating in the spring of this year, summer at the latest. This is the same operator who operates out at 50 Point, where we have one rink, but the demand is so high, and geographically the beach park is a more central location. He thought it would be worthwhile to put in a couple of pads down by the central part of the park.
So, Neil, is that a moneymaker for both you and for the city ultimately, hopefully through this lease, Madam Deputy Mayor? I would hope it is, but anyways, I'll hear from you.
Well, through you, it is definitely a moneymaker for the city, because that's an additional revenue stream. Whether or not it will impact the HCA from the standpoint of reduced revenue at the 50 Point ball hockey, that is yet to be seen.
Okay. Lastly, waterfalls. It's timely, and you know, Chris, I couldn't let you go by today with your last official budget presentation. And again, I'm not to gush or praise over all the great work you've done in this community over the years. So, Madam Deputy Mayor, through to Chris. Chris, the waterfalls, and you've been good enough with Scott Peck to attend past meetings for me in terms of, I'll call it a wonderful problem that we have at these sites. Do you see, Chris, both short-term greater education communication, but some long-term opportunities to provide safer access, more access, but also keeping in mind the fact that abutting communities and or ensuring that if we can mitigate, reduce the number of rope rescues, looking to you as you're often a good guy who brainstorms, who's visionary that way, and maybe a collaboration between yourself, city parks, etc. Where do you see this all going? Through you, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Madam Deputy Mayor, the waterfalls issue is inextricably linked between the waterfalls in the far west part of our watershed right through to those in the east. I believe the future, the way to reduce, you mentioned rope rescues, that kind of thing, is through education, through awareness and outreach. When we add the $300,000, say, in fencing and signage and don't you dare kind of thing at one waterfalls, I would use the Spencer Gorge, for example, it pushes the need or compulsion that many of our citizens, I'm looking at the statistics, our Hamilton's citizens, to touch nature. They want to get their hands in the water, they want to be near the rock falls, they want to be near the escarpment faces. And as we do something on one side of the page, you will notice the wave of impacts moving across the watershed, and we're getting greater erosion on the areas around the waterfalls. We're getting lots more litter, a lot of people attending different places because they're not satisfying that compulsion at Webster's like they used to be able to do. Okay. So that's where I feel we need to sing from the same songbook when it comes to our collaboration with Parks Department and the other municipal agencies. What's the message? How do we get it out? How can we be consistent so that of all of our areas provide fair and safe access without the onus being necessarily pushed now as we go forward, pushed onto the private property waterfall sites, and et cetera, like Sherman. If you go there now and have a look at Sherman Falls, it's getting beat.
I see. Yeah.
So we need to have a comprehensive linked program between the HCA and the City of Hamilton primarily here to address those escarpment face concerns.
Well, Chris, thank you for that excellent answer. And you've been at the table. You've always been available and accessible. And whoever succeeds you, I hope will continue to want to be a partner at the table. Madam Deputy Mayor, all my questions have been satisfactorily answered. And I'm just always will continue to be a proud supporter of our Hamilton Conservation Authority. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And Councillor Connolly, please.
Thank you. Some of the questions have been asked by Councillor Jackson, and thank you for asking them, I guess. But I wanted to ask one about the East Mountain lands that we've been purchasing through some money from the royalties and the Heritage Green. Can you give a 2-minute overview of why we are buying those? It's not just for looks. And what do we expect to see from those lands in the future? Through the chair, please.
Thank you, Chris.
Madam Deputy Mayor, I would like to thank our councillor for that lead-in. It's a very exciting initiative that the Hamilton Conservation Authority has taken the lead on. We've created the opportunity for a new conservation area, Hamilton Conservation in the East Mountain. And we have been not reluctant, but lack of opportunity per se to put the kind of mark in the east that Hamilton Conservation Authority is known for in the west part of our watershed. We have purchased 178 acres last year. The year before, rather, just before Christmas, we picked up another 46 acres or 42 acres, a beautiful tract of land, and they're generally speaking strung out between the Devil's Punch Bowl along the DeFasco 2000 trail. The objective is basically threefold. Mitigation of climate change issues by having natural lands do their natural function. Mitigating surface water issues on the east escarpment that affect Lower Stony Creek. We're trying to hold water back, and as Scott Peck, who's the managing director of that initiative now, is to put the wiggle back in the streams. We want the water to stay on the escarpment longer than it has. Because back in the 30s, agricultural practices, we wanted to get the water off the escarpment, so we put a lot of drainage initiatives in to dry the place up. Rather unsuccessful initiative. So we've been acquiring farmlands that have not been successful for agriculture, and we're looking at an engineering initiative that will be, if I might say, like a core conservation area with a string of pearls. And these string of pearls would have lands that would be available for recreation, for education purposes, but also to store water and let it gently be released to improve that flood and erosion issues that we're experiencing in Lower Stony Creek, and give us some natural environment benefits and natural heritage benefits and things up on the mountain. That project will take a decades to evolve and be more as time goes on than it is today, but it's got a great healthy start with the assistance of the Heritage Green Community Trust and the City of Hamilton. And thank you. You may not know you're our 50% partner in where we stand in that right now. Scott is leading a study, an initiative to look, and it was funded through the Municipal Green Infrastructure Program, to actually get some designs and things of that nature in the works. We're looking forward to a public, open environmental assessment process should be really going forward this year, and you'll see a lot more community and awareness and engagement on that initiative. But it's really a massive, low impact development, an LID type initiative. What's exciting about it, we're going into an existing landscape and retrofitting it rather than having a greenfield opportunity to create low impact development. It's the largest similar or that type of initiative in the province. It's cutting edge.
Thank you.
It's awesome.
One more.
Yep, go ahead.
The second one's just a comment, and I know you don't want people talking about you, but I've been on the Conservation Authority for starting my third year. And I just want to thank you personally for your expertise and your management skills, but most of all, for your enthusiasm. I can't get over how enthused you get over everything that you do. And that is a great compliment that a lot of management people don't have. And I just want to wish you the best and hope to see you around as an advisor or as a consultant or as a whatever. But I hope next meeting is not the last time I will see you. And I just want to give the best to you and your family, and I hope you have many, 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 many years.
To that, Deputy Mayor, whatever might be the best. Whatever. A whenever, whatever might be the best classification for my next adventures. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Councillor Conley. Councillor Brenda Johnson, please.
Yep, thank you. And first of all, thank you, Scott Peck. Every time I call and we have an issue on a property, you're there within It's just amazing service that you send your staff, and you're always listening to the residents' concerns, and I want to thank you for that publicly. And Santina, it's always nice to see you as well. Chris, this councillor is going to miss you terribly, so I won't get into that portion because you and I go way back. And speaking of your retirement, just a process question. What type of process have you put in place to find that replacement that will never fill your shoes?
Chris?
Thank you. And with the assistance of our vice chair, she is the chair of our Business and Administration Committee for the past number of years, we implemented an internal search. We brought the methodologies to our Business and Administration Committee and our board early last fall. We have been mentoring at the HCA for this moment for 4 years. Internal applicants have applied. A number of steps have been undertaken. Business and Administration Committee has recently met and made a unanimous recommendation or decision at that level. That recommendation will come to the Board of Directors on February the 2nd. It's our annual general meeting. We're looking for a ratification. We're hoping for a ratification of the Business Administration Committee's unanimous recommendation. And the new Chief Administrative Officer will be announced February the 2nd. Okay. I will be available for a measurable term for transitions.
Okay.
And I'm very excited about the future of the Hamilton Conservation Authority.
You are always excited about the Hamilton Conservation Authority. You just put an adjective in there. Good point.
Councillor?
Thank you very much. And the East Mountain, as you just referred to, is now traveling into Ward 11. And anybody who understands the Vinemount Swamp understands the need for that drainage, as you just alluded to. And geographically, you've got the escarpment, but you also have a plateau beyond, south of the escarpment, which traps the water further south. So I really appreciate it, and I appreciate the updates on what's happening and what kinds of lands tracts that you're getting, so that we can let the community know when they see some changes occurring. So I'd really appreciate if you could pass that on to your successor about keeping them informed. And thank you, Councillor Jackson, for the Bimbrook question. And I know you said it was convoluted, a lot of cooperation. What would be, in your opinion, the first steps if this was something that Hamilton was seriously thinking of proceeding on?
Chris?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. The first step would be notice of motion to the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority and their board for an interest in amending the boundaries or the service levels, that kind of thing. My understanding is from the sitting board of directors, you would need a 2/3 majority to amend the jurisdiction of a conservation authority. The Conservation Authority Act and those nuances is quite easy to reach by Googling Conservation Authority Act and looking through the regulations for disbandment, amalgamations, things of that nature. Conservation authorities have gone through these kinds of things in the past where it was determined that perhaps one conservation authority would be better aligned, and so they've taken it and created one out of two, that kind of thing. That's quite a stretch to anticipate that Hamilton would have the understanding, the capabilities to reach all the way through to Niagara. Perhaps Councillor Jackson's comment about Binbrook has some relevancy. I have not given consideration to that prior to today.
Okay, so again, putting your staff on notice, we'd like to just explore some of those options and see whether or not they're even relevant to you as the Conservation Authority of Hamilton. That would be great. And I noticed as well that you're going with the old agreement that was set up with the 4 conservation authorities. Thank you very much. If I can get you to go to Westfield, this is just a financial question on top of all this. If I look at your first page that you in our handout here, it looks like Westfield is actually coming in $100,000 less and it's, my understanding is, it was because the management fee of approximately $108,000 per annum that was paid to the HCA. So we know that no longer is got that transaction in there. So that's why you're showing a positive with being under $100,000.
That is correct. We've gone from almost a fee certain to a fee performance base.
Okay, thank you. So what is the prediction for 2018? Because if it was approximately $108,000 and you're showing a favorable $100,000, there's $8,000 sitting in there that's, so would we be seeing that $8,000 in 2018 become a need to fill?
Well, now that Westfield is sort of inside the family,
Right.
it becomes part of
Right.
all of the variances. And in isolation, it may be just that, an $8,000 variance. But because we have now more critical mass, if we find that things are quiet at Westfield, we're not getting the film shoots, then we have opportunities to maybe offset something somewhere else. So we manage it as part of the family now instead of a separate entity.
Okay, thank you. So what I'm hearing from you is in 2018, we're not going to see a deficit of $8,000 because of that agreement and the variance that you have today.
No, the one would not drive the other. The only thing when we did buy the property from you for buy as in $2, part of the agreement was that the recognition that we would need a continuation of the city levy support, and that the amount that we would get would change on a percentage basis similar to your normal request for all agencies and boards. That's the only one thing for certain. The rest of it is on us to manage.
Okay, thank you. And I noticed that you put them in two separate headings this year. Will they continue to stay under two separate headings, or because now Westfield is part of your organization, will it now become under one heading?
In the near future, I think we'll keep it separate because it is so unique and it does receive separate funding, where to put it in with the conservation areas, which we don't apportion any levy to, would kind of cause a little bit of a misdirect, I think. So.
Okay.
And
so just for transparency.
Yes.
Keep it separate.
Yes.
Okay. And I noticed you talked about Confederation Park, which is almost on the same lines. You know, it was a property that's owned by the city, and you're operating it. Right. Has there been, and I, please excuse me for my colleagues that are sitting on the board, because I, as Councillor Jackson says, they don't talk to me either. Is that possibility to, is the HCA's, would it be more prudent, would it be more efficient if you basically took over the properties rather than having these agreements, or is each one just unique and you just carry on as?
Neil?
Yep. Thank you, through Madam Chair. They are both unique, and Confederation Park has huge plans. I mean, the Public Works and the city have earmarked a lot of funds to go in to develop it, and it's really moving to even more away from the type of thing that we're best at, and more, you know, what the city is best at, with all the sports parks and that sort of thing. Sure. So the arrangement works really well with the flexibility that we have with our staff, and I think we should keep it that way.
Thank you. Thank you. Those are my questions.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Whitehead, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I didn't have a chance to talk to Chris, so I wasn't given any such direction in respect to gushing over him. But I can tell you that I've known Chris since Public Works, and he was committed and dedicated, innovative, accessible, and provided exemplary work on behalf of the taxpayers of the community, and it just continued with his transition to the Conservation Authority, and I certainly sat with him on the Conservation Authority for a short period of time, well, for one term actually, before he so eligibly became the chair of the Conservation Authority. So you're much too young to retire, certainly by looks. I don't know what your age is, but certainly by activity and looks. You certainly don't fit that profile, but I really, truly, and sincerely believe we were blessed with the transition from Public Works to Conservation Authority with your leadership, and I sincerely want to thank you on behalf of all those I represent. Second piece is Councillor Jackson had asked a question about what would require to better, and I understand the conservation authorities are sort of mapped out based on watersheds and water courses and, you know, what their primary role is. Having said that, there's still overlap. Is that clear? Is that right? There's still overlap in regards to those same watersheds with conservation authorities.
The watersheds, they flow in different directions. They don't overlap. It's the citizens of Hamilton where we have overlapping services within different watershed boundaries. 4 conservation authorities have areas of jurisdiction within the City of Hamilton's municipal boundary. I mean, if I understand...
Yeah, but the reason I'm asking that is because I don't know the original scope mandate and the defining of the current boundaries for conservation authorities across Ontario were driven by certain principles. The question is, I think Councillor Jackson sort of led whether or not on the Bimbrook side, if there's a possibility on the Niagara, if that could be captured within the political boundary, the revenue boundary. And I would actually extend that to Halton, because I'm tired of seeing, you know, regardless if it's a $10,000 increase, when you're looking at a consistent increase of well over 3% every year. And this year I think it's 5.3% or 5.4%. And it's just a small amount. And when I look at the amount, it's got to be a very small impacted area. I would think that that would be easier captured, and I'd be much more comfortable being captured within the Hamilton Conservation Authority area. And there may be still overlap in regards to working together, but you still do that regardless. Is that correct?
Madam Deputy Mayor, that's quite correct. We have a very good level of cooperation.
So I wouldn't mind at least entertaining that discussion to better align it. The next question I have is Puslinch is part of our levy. Is that correct? Puslinch?
Puslinch, Madam?
Puslinch.
Puslinch does contribute to our levy.
Do you make a presentation to whatever body that governs that particular area?
We have in the past. This year we have not.
And they must be quite pleased with the consistent numbers and increases as you have with the City of Hamilton, and they're blessed by the fact that you continue understanding and managing the value versus the cost impacts and try and work within, and clearly it's been demonstrated over the last number of years, work within those parameters. I wish I could say that about some of the other authorities that come in here with their increases. And I know they're doing good work, and it's not a criticism of the work they do, but it seems that somewhere along the line, the affordability and increases become secondary to the challenge, and it is frustrating because you think you drive that message, and clearly some get it and some don't, and there might be exceptional circumstances, so I want to give them benefit of doubt, but when you see it year in and year out, it is certainly concerning for this one councillor. 178,000 acres, I think I heard you say you purchased in the last how many years?
Chris?
Sorry, not 1,000.
Deputy Mayor, we purchased 178 and then another 46 for a single project. In the last 4 years, we've acquired 994 acres to my last estimate in the last 4 years without using Hamilton taxpayer dollars per se, rather other than the support that we got from Hamilton for the East Mountain. Those again, though, were not levied dollars from Hamilton taxpayers.
I want to highlight that. The other piece I want to highlight is that non-government owned lands you also purchased. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes.
And what is the total expenditure, if I may ask, on the privately owned lands that you went out and purchased to meet your objectives?
About $2.5 million in the east, and then a number of properties here in the middle section and the west have been added to that. I have to scratch my head a little bit to get you the accurate number, but it depends on the parcel of property as to its market rates and that kind of thing as to how those transactions go.
I understand that. I just wanted to highlight that you are making significant investment in private lands to meet your objective.
That is a very true statement.
The other point, I think Councillor Jackson touched on it. I have the Shadok Falls. We've had a number of rope rescues at Shadok Falls. I believe part of it would fall under the Conservation Authority, so maybe I can get assistance with that. Does it or does it not? Shadok Falls.
Madam, the Shadok Falls is not owned by the Hamilton Conservation Authority, but it would not prevent us from collaborating with municipality back to that messaging and access piece so that we do get consistent treatment, carriage, really, of of Shadok as well. We certainly can provide some assistance in that regard.
So the reason I raise it, Madam Chair, is that at Shadok Falls, I think I can give you a site that you can go visit, the activity level at that location. In fact, from a picturesque point of view, it is a pretty picturesque location. A lot of teenagers hang out. We've had a number of rope rescues. We've had to remove fences from private properties. And we actually, through the Public Works Yard, is fenced off and no trespassing. And, of course, the fencing doesn't work. They cut through and they still get access. It's just like you can't, no matter what you do, it seems that they're going to get access to that falls regardless. So understanding that experience at Shadok, understanding that there are thrill seekers and adventurers that like to go beyond the conformity of path systems and warnings that provide a safe passage for many of those to enjoy. Is there any tools that we're not thinking about or we haven't been using that could help facilitate this challenge?
Chris, please.
Madam Deputy, we've been throwing our whole toolkit at Spencer Gorge, Webster, and Two Falls. We've got a lot of experience and limited success with fencing and signage and staffing on site. We have ambassadors that are there. We have security people. We pay police to help manage us with that circumstance. It's the next step. We have to increase our communications, messaging, awareness, and I believe that the secret in that regard will be a collaboration further than we have. We have a good relationship with the City of Hamilton, but to extend that into the future. More messaging, staff on hand, giving out the proper message to people on a timely fashion. I have often thought it would be good to have a collaboration with our police and our own enforcement staff to go to places that are clearly marked, indicated, posted, signed as no trespassing, unsafe, and actually go in and encourage people to get out of where they're not supposed to be, as they do in national parks and places right across the planet. You'll have enforcement sometimes take place to encourage people to get out of areas they're not supposed to be in. It may be that we have to move to a little more of that kind of approach.
So it's my understanding that Niagara parks and that they actually charge people for trespassing when they go off the beaten trails. So is there other enforcement that's now starting to take place to ensure that there's a penalty when they go off these beaten paths?
Madam, we have not moved in that direction.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you, Councillor Whitehead. For those councillors who can hear my voice, we do not have quorum, and I would appreciate if we could get a couple more back in here. Thank you. Wonders of technology. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. All right, so thank you. I have no further speakers on the list. So motion to...
Madam Chair, just before we do that,
so close.
The chair of the board, Rob Masuda, is not here. He is... and I know he would want to be here. I mean, obviously, he takes great pride in the services. He's not feeling well, so he's out under the weather, and I just want to highlight that fact. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I'm just going to remind everyone that your AGM for the Hamilton Conservation Authority is February 2nd. And could I just get a confirmation for the time and the location, please, Chris?
Thank you, Madam. It's 7 p.m. at Woodend, our headquarters in Ancaster, 838 Mineral Springs Road.
Mineral Springs Road. Okay, thank you very much. So motion to receive, Councillor Jackson and Councillor Aidan Johnson, all in favor? That is carried. Thank you so much. And next, moving on to 5.6, Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority. I'd like to call Peter Graham, the acting CAO, to provide the presentation for the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority. Peter, welcome.
Well, thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor, and good day, councillors. The MPCA does truly appreciate the opportunity to present its 2017 budget to all of you today. Again, I am the acting chair for the MPCA, but before I get going, I wouldn't mind the opportunity just to introduce our newly elected chair, Sandy Annunziata, a councillor from Fort Erie.
Okay,
Great to have him here with us.
Welcome.
And as well, we have two other board members that are here that represent the City of Hamilton on the MPCA board. We have member Stuart Beattie, and we have our first chair from the city, representing the City of Hamilton on the MPCA board, James Kasperset. So great to have them here as well.
Welcome, gentlemen. Thank you.
So jumping in, it was back in last June where staff was provided with direction from MPCA's Budget Steering Committee to come up with a budget with a total combined levy increase of 1%, equates to about $88,000, an operating budget that's premised on actual costs with not tapping into any additional operating reserves, sustaining obviously the cost savings that we've realized to date. And obviously, we want to continue to pursue additional revenue-generating opportunities. So that was the direction that we received from the Budget Steering Committee at that time. So let's have a look at terms of how we achieve that. When we looked at our park operations, over the last 3 years, revenues have increased over 13%, while at the same time, operating costs have reduced over 12%, for a net 25% improvement in the overall performance of our operating parks that are noted there. We also looked at self-generated funds. Obviously, we want to move this in a positive direction, and as we see over the last 5 years, using 2011 as a baseline, there's been an approximate 25% increase over the past 5 years in the funds that we've been self-generating. And just as is the case with Hamilton and other CAs that surround this area, there's some beautiful parks, including Binbrook, that are part of our conservation areas. So we believe there's even more opportunities to generate and additional funds and continue to move this in a positive direction. One thing that was highlighted in our existing strategic plan was to improve our plan review and permitting processes. So as this chart has indicated, over the past 3 years, the average number of days to process an MPCA permit has moved from 29 days down to, in 2016, only 19 days to process a permit. So that's a positive direction, and we want to continue to move in that direction in terms of improving our overall efficiencies. This particular slide actually needs updating because it's actually even much higher than initially computed when we last time submitted this presentation in terms of the sheer number of volunteers. This is a slide that actually really amazes me. When you look at the sheer number of people that voluntarily give of their time to help the MPCA in terms of executing our events, programs, and services that we offer. Over 2.5 more times volunteers based on a baseline of 2014. So this is actually wonderful to see. And in February, we're going to be having our Conservation Achievement Awards, and that's a unique opportunity where we can actually say thanks to many of these volunteers who step up. In terms of 2017 revenues allocated to the operating budget, you'll see a breakdown there in terms of the levy portion, the grants we received from the feds and the province, as well as the funds that we obtain through our park operations and other strategic initiatives, as well as the administration fees for our permitting processes. You'll highlight it there again is that in terms of reserves, we do not intend on tapping into those reserves in 2017. The foundation, $28,000, we're certainly looking to improve on that and really accelerate the health of that foundation moving forward. This slide just provides more of a general overview of the 2016 actuals in terms of the levy portions across the various within our jurisdiction, the Niagara region, City of Hamilton, Halton County, for that total of $88,000 in the bottom right-hand corner, with the City of Hamilton's portion being just slightly over $18,000 in terms of an increase. This slide just shows revenue changes, increases and decreases. As many would know in this room, that there was a number of years ago, there was a significant reduction in terms of revenue we were able to get from the feds and the province, and we're continuing to see that trend slide a little bit in terms of revenues there. The capital budget, this just highlights a few outside of Hamilton in terms of the 2017 capital that's going towards 11 projects as a whole, upgrades to some of our existing operations and water level and water quality equipment. But what I really want to highlight as we move into the subsequent slides in terms of what are the resources that we're spending in Hamilton or have spent. When we look back at 2016, this is ongoing information that we provide in our ongoing status reports to the board on a monthly basis. All this information is available online, but as this slide will indicate, about 11% of the MPCA permits and applications that we reviewed and issued was from the City of Hamilton, which is the second largest percentage by municipality, next to St. Catharines. And the next slide basically provides a little bit further breakdown of these numbers that breaks it down between, plan review, Niagara Escarpment Commission development permit applications, property information requests, MPCA permits, and building permit reviews by each area. And again, Hamilton's second only to the City of St. Catharines. Another excellent program that the MPCA has been doing for a number of years, we have 75 water quality monitoring stations across our watershed. 11 of those water quality monitoring stations are situated within the City of Hamilton as part of our core monitoring program. We collect water samples monthly, and these are sampled for general chemistry, metals, nutrients, and bacteria, etc. And then all that information is put into an annual MPCA water quality monitoring report, which again resides on our MPCA website for all to view. As well, the Hamilton International Airport obtains the services of the MPCA to monitor, they call them macroinvertebrates, or basically spineless insects, because when you sample those, it actually gives you a very, very good indication about what's happening in the water and the environment around that area. So those samples are collected each year, and this has been going on since 1998, and provide annual reports to the airport on the status of any potential impact on the water courses. And at the request of the Glanbrook Landfill Committee, the City of Hamilton obtains the services of MPCA. And again, this has been happening since 1996 to monitor upstream and downstream of the Glanbrook landfill to assess any landfill impacts to the adjacent water courses as well. This slide basically gives you an indication over the past few years, the capital that's been put towards Binbrook in itself, The master plan process is still very, very early in that process in terms of development of a master plan. But in terms of capital, we spent $155,000 in 2015, or about 14% of our capital budget. And last year, it was over $660,000, close to our capital budget towards Binbrook. The next slide will give you an indication in terms of a list of those projects that we focused on. And just one other highlight to make in this particular slide is that the direct operating cost for Binbrook in 2017 is just slightly over $330,000. And again, as mentioned, this gives you an indication of some of the capital projects that we're focusing on. Some of them are being carried over into this year, as, for example, the splash pad, which will be a great addition to Binbrook, and that's fully expected. In fact, it must be completed by the spring. We have to have that ready. So that's a huge focus of ours. The new fishing pier, and again, there's some great projects that we're continuing to finalize on that list. It's a beautiful area. So in summary, we did come up with a budget with a total combined levy guidance increase of 1%, an operating budget, again, based on actual costs with no net reduction to the operating reserves, continue to sustain cost savings, and continue to pursue additional revenue generating opportunities. There's some really, really neat ideas, I think, that our Director of Operations and Strategic Initiatives has in terms of generating even additional revenues as we move forward. And this provides just a summary by area, and of course the City of Hamilton in terms of the levy increase is 1.4%, and we were provided guidance of 0.8%. Went through that fairly quickly. Apologize if I rushed a little bit much, but thank you for your time and be open to questions.
Many thanks, Peter. We do have a speaker in Councillor Jackson. Thanks, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Nice to meet you, Sandy, and Stu, of course, who's been our regular last few years appointee to the MPCA. Appreciate the collaboration, the abutting partnerships that we've carried out between Niagara and the City of Hamilton, primarily over our Binbrook site. And thank you for the over $600,000, Peter, you're showing in capital upgrades this year and new amenities at Binbrook. You're operating as well, coming within the guidelines. So, Peter, thank you for all that. As I'm now just leading to the question, segueing what I asked our own HCA, and again, if I'm being a little bit simplistic or overly naive, forgive me, but when I Glanbrook landfill requires your services, which again, thank you. Our airport from time to time, and the Conservation Authority, it just, for me, geographically, it just, and especially since amalgamation of our city in 2000, it just makes imminent, natural sense for me to ask, is there an opportunity, hypothetically, that our two bodies with, I guess, provincial ultimate approval could cooperatively or collaboratively work together to let Binbrook, where all the community development of residential and additional infrastructure improvements that are going on within the City of Hamilton, that the Binbrook CA could come within under our domain. Mr. Deputy Mayor, not meant to be provocative, just to open up a conversation. Mr. Deputy Mayor, through to Peter or Sandy for maybe a comment, please. Thank you.
I'll dive in. Yeah, no, and I obviously was here when you had addressed the question to my esteemed colleague as well, and I would just reiterate what he's already indicated. The board is the authority under the Conservation Authorities Act, and thereby has to abide by that act. And in terms of staff, we get direction from our board. So as I guess reread that portion of the act when it deals with amalgamation, there is a means to move forward with that. And the way I understand it, and don't quote me on this, I'm not an absolute expert, but it would obviously take the respective parties to come to the table, hold a meeting, and basically come to that consensus in terms of any amalgamation or change of boundaries. So that's all I know at this point, but in terms of an openness, we can discuss.
Thank you, Peter, for the, Sandy, if you wanted to make a comment politically as well, and again, not to put anybody on the spot
absolutely.
today, it was just a natural evolution that I thought, given everything, that I would ask it of both bodies today.
Well, first off, I appreciate the opportunity because I think it's important to come before Hamilton Council and thank you for this opportunity and to reconfirm our commitment to work very collegially with councillors and certainly the residents of Hamilton. So to your point, Councillor, and it's a good question. I think ultimately, if the end goal is more effective and better stewardship over those lands, then I think to the conversation. Ultimately, though, there would be some statutory mechanisms that would have to come online before that conversation could be had. But again, we're committed to working collegially, not combatively, with any member of Hamilton City Council or certainly the residents. So I think there's value in the question, and certainly that's a conversation that may be posed to the board, and we can have that conversation.
Thank you for the sincerity and genuineness, both of you, of the response and the replies. So it sounds like, Mr. Deputy Mayor, if there's appetite around this body, and if I'm whistling Dixie on my own, so be it. But if there's appetite down the road, I would suggest that it sounds like, listening to the two NPCA reps, that it would require some notice of motion from us to even begin the potential conversation. It may go somewhere, it may go nowhere, but at least to begin the conversation. So, Mr. Deputy Mayor, I thank the gentleman for coming in today and for all they've done up to now, especially for our Binbrook area. Thanks, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
I'll accept that as a motion at the appropriate time, and that'll be seconded by Councillor Collins.
Well, Mr. Deputy Mayor, I appreciate that acknowledgement, but I'm going to wait to hear from the ward councillor where the Binbrook CA is, just in case I may be offside or maybe premature in what I'm possibly suggesting.
Sounds like
Thank you very much, though.
Sounds like a sage motion to me.
Thank you.
Councillor Johnson.
And I had a sidebar with Councillor Jackson. I think we're going to work with staff on the wording of this motion just to start the conversation between the two CAs. So we'll just put that on the border. I have a couple of questions here, and I don't know which one of you are going to answer, but I appreciate any answer. And we are excited about the new splash pad and the amenities that are happening with the P150 that came through. I think it was $245,000 that you received for that initiative. So that was wonderful. Thank you to the federal government. I believe that in the past, and I believe it was earlier in my first term, I know that there's the levy portion, and then there's the special levy portion. The special levy portion is specific to the Binbrook Conservation Authority and any lands that are in the Hamilton area. The comment that we heard back then was, we found out that a lot of the money went into operating, we didn't know where the rest of the money went, and I believe that we've got that on record. So I'm just wondering if you've got a handle yet, because if I go through my figures, we've put in probably $2 million just in that special levy capital project. How much of that $2 million has actually been spent in Binbrook since 2008? Do you have those numbers?
Peter?
Yes, through you, Deputy Mayor. I don't have those numbers available. However, I will absolutely make a commitment to get that information and what would be the best way in terms of communicating back to.
Well, if you can go through
Yes.
clerk, and then we can redistribute, and you and I can connect after this meeting. I can give you my contact information too, because congratulations on acting, ED, by the way.
Yeah, thank you.
And I also want to applaud the MPCA for the motion that they made at their AGM for their audit. This value for money, whatever you want to call it. And I think that's going to answer a lot of the questions that are probably going to be coming forward out of this. So can you give us a timeline or the process on how this audit, how this is going to evolve?
Peter?
Through you, I'm glad you glanced over to our chair, because I'm going to pass that over.
Sandy?
Well, thank you. Through the Deputy Mayor, thank you for the question. I think it's the commitment of the board to provide leadership in that opportunity, in that area. I will commit that those minutes will be ratified at our next board meeting. At that time, we will act exclusively on the language posed in that motion, and we will be very respectful of that motion moving forward.
Well, that was a nice political answer. Thank you. All I need to know is what the process going forward. You're going to ratify it at your next meeting.
Correct.
I get all that. We know the process.
Okay.
You're speaking to the choir.
Sure.
But how is that going to evolve going forward? What's going to happen in your opinion? And it doesn't, we're not going to hold you to it, but what is in your opinion? Are you going out for a third party? What's the timeline you're going to be asking for? That sort of thing.
Well, and again, it wasn't a political answer. That was just the honest answer.
Yeah.
So to your point, all those questions you pose and raise are addressed within the language of the motion. Now, I don't know if there was an opportunity to see the live stream of that meeting, but the motion was moved and seconded accordingly, and there were a lot of amendments that were made to it. So we want to make sure that we truly capture the language in the motion, and the intent moving forward is truly captured in that motion. So I don't have the authority to unilaterally suggest what my opinion is, what the motion and what the direction is going to be. All I can say is that we were going to take a very, very thoughtful approach and make sure that we follow the language and the intent in that motion, and that will happen February 15th when we lift that draft watermark and it becomes a ratified motion.
Councillor Johnson.
Thank you. And in that language, it's going to tell when it should start, how long they've got for, what years of time it's going to be over, and what in-depth investigation that they're going to do.
Correct. And I could speak in generalities to the motion, but again, I don't want to presuppose the exact language that was crafted by a number of board members making amendments to strengthen that motion. So I can speak to what I think the intent was and the opinions are, but specifically to your questions as far as timelines, what the intent is, what the effect will be, who the parties and participation will look like, going to be crafted in the motion specifically, and that will be ratified February 15th.
Okay, thank you for that. And you know that the City of Hamilton has asked for that forensic audit as well. So is it possible that we can get that motion sent to us once it's been ratified?
Absolutely, and that's the commitment that we made.
And be kept apprised of how the audit and what's going to happen, timeline, and all that sort of thing as well?
Absolutely, and that's the commitment certainly by the Chair's office and certainly by our CAO and certainly by our entire board. We want to listen to all our voices, and certainly we want to keep everyone apprised of the situation going forward. So it's very open, it's very public, and it's very transparent. And again, this is an opportunity to really capture the intent of the motion and make sure that the mover and certainly the board and certainly the general public have an opportunity to get last blush at the motion moving forward. And that's why the delay right now in making sure that those minutes are properly ratified and that draft motion is properly ratified as well.
Okay, thank you for
Councillor
that.
Johnson, I must say that the tone is very refreshing, just to add to that for sure.
I'm not finished, thank you.
Are you done?
I'm no.
Oh, Councillor Johnson, back to you.
Yes, thank you.
I thought you were finished.
I'm still here.
Floor is yours.
All right, thank you. And this is going to be a mix between asking questions to staff and as well as if I can have some latitude, please. Thank you. We have a citizen who has respectfully come forward probably on a yearly basis since I've been in this. And as of yesterday, I can't remember how many reports now we've had on accountability for the taxpayers. And yesterday at AFNA, we got another report from this citizen respectfully asking for questions to be answered. So at that time, AFNA requested through Mike Segarek, our GM of Finance, for the staff to take a look at this report and to provide answers. My understanding is another report came forward. Did your staff do the same thing? Did you ask your staff to take a look at the questions in this report? And this was an accountability for the MPCA. Did you ask, what did your board do?
Right. Now, Councillor Johnson, now if this is an FNA issue that's not related directly to the budget, it would be inappropriate to continue the line of questioning?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I used AFNA as an example. We had a citizen come forward with
just
questions about accountability, about our budgeting, about the way we do things, and we just automatically sent it to staff to report on this.
Okay.
I'm now a report that was set out about the MPCA, and I'm asking what did his board do?
Oh, I see. Okay, fair enough.
Just to give a segue of what we do, what did the board do?
Peter.
Yes, through you, Deputy Mayor. So if it's relating to what I believe it's relating, there was a 45-page anonymous document that was distributed, and it was from that document that various allegations were made against a cross-section of people and the MPCA as a whole, and among others. And it's then from that, there was a specific individual that was confirmed to have been distributing it. So therefore, the board confirmed that action needed to be taken. So there's actually a statement of claim out there against that individual distributing that document. And obviously, with that process, legal counsel was advised and now part of that process. So given that it's in litigation, legal counsel has advised me as staff not to comment on that particular matter, other than to say is that it's in process.
And I totally respect
it's in litigation.
that. I totally respect the process. I just find it ironic that it's constantly being told it's anonymous, but they know exactly who to sue at the end of the day. Okay, so going back to one of the questions I asked the Hamilton Conservation Authority about the process for searching out for a new executive director. You're the acting executive director. What is the process for the MPCA to find a new executive director?
Want to speak to that?
Yes.
Maybe a conflict.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead.
Yeah, it might be a conflict for you.
Well, what I can say is that at the January board meeting this past week is a report went to the board, not for myself, but basically with the process of establishing a selection committee in a terms of reference that the board resolved, and have every intention, without overstepping my bounds, I think, to initiate that process fairly quickly. And I believe there was 5 board members that are part of that selection committee. 6, excuse me. Is there representation from the City of Hamilton? Yes, that's what I love to hear. So that process is just getting underway. And is there anything else?
Is that a new process? Is that relatively new process that you've established the selection committee?
I can answer that, and it runs parallel to the same processes that we've worked from in the past. Basically, the terms of reference have been established for establishing this particular steering committee, and the wording is very specific. It's the CAO search committee. It's the terms of reference, how the board was populated. It will be 6 board members, and those 6 board members will steer the process going forward, how those candidates are chosen, and certainly bringing the top 3 successful candidates forward and having the board the opportunity to properly vet them, properly screen them, and properly answer questions. And throughout that process, the candidate chosen.
Is this a new process for the NPCA, or did you follow that the last couple of times that you've done your ED? You've had a selection committee and away you went?
It runs parallel to our previous practice when we went about our previous selection of our CAO. Now, I wasn't a part of that process. Obviously, I've only served 2 years on the board, and I wasn't privy to those comments. But maybe Peter can speak to that.
And just one more thing to add from my recollection from the board meeting as well. This is from board members. From what I heard, they really appreciated the previous process because the last time they went through it, in terms of a last phase, the potential candidates had to come before the entire board and make a presentation. So there is the 6 members that are part of the selection committee, but I believe it was resolved as well that the final process is that any of the final candidates would have to come before the full authority board, and at which time a decision would be rendered.
And thank you for that. What is your process when someone takes an extended leave of absence? So in the case that I'm referring to is our Hamilton appointee took a leave of absence, and it was quite extensive. Is there a process in place that the MPCA by the
Councillor Johnson,
appointees?
this has nothing to do with the budget, so can you please stay focused and on the budget issue? Any of the peripheral type of issues can be dealt with at GIC or through email offline. but this is a budget meeting that needs to be dealt.
Okay, then maybe I can
accordingly.
just say what I did with the Hamilton Conservation Authority. Could you
Okay.
please help us out the next time this happens and notify us if anybody goes into leave of absence? That would be wonderful. Sorry?
Okay, if you can end this now anytime accordingly, and go on the budget item. Yep. Okay, so we have Councillor Whitehead on budget questions, please.
In fact, two things. One is that I can't think of a better citizen representative to have our voice at the Niagara Conservation Authority than the appointment that we have put forward, Mr. Beattie. And I'm very comfortable with his oversight, his voice. He's very knowledgeable and experienced and has a pretty significant background and isn't scared to speak up when he needs to speak up. So I want to congratulate, he's in the crowd, and I want to certainly put that respect out. Secondly, I too want to echo what seems to be a more congenial approach to the relationship and the sincerity that's been presented here before us here today. That's just a preamble, Mr. Chair. The third piece, Councillor Green wants to undermine and be contemptuous to conversations, and that's fine. But please allow.
Okay. Point of privilege. You did name Councillor Green. So okay. But in all fairness, Councillor Green hasn't said anything. That was my introduction, and not Councillor Green's.
Mr. Chair, I have ears. I have ears here. I can hear what's going on the other side.
Okay. Councillor, on the point of privilege.
On the point of privilege, I encourage the councillor to check out the public record. It's available online. Creative Commons. He can go and look at the tape, and then apologize to me accordingly once he sees exactly what transpired.
Okay. Perhaps we can just calm down a little bit. And Councillor Whitehead, could you please continue on the line of questioning?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that we've had latitude to recognize people and I think already comments have been made about the approach that the Niagara presentation has taken place. I'm just reiterating it, so I'm not sure why that would be out of order. The question was asked earlier by one of the councillors in respect to the consideration of entering into a constructive discussion about the merits of taking some of the area that elapsed with the city of Hamilton, and certainly could be considered to be stewarded through the Hamilton Conservation, whether we can enter into those kinds of dialogues. But I noticed that the comment that was made by you was that if it's better, and I would suggest that first of all, I want to make it clear, I don't think, certainly enough from my perspective, I don't think Niagara's doing a bad job. As far as being stewards and doing and meeting and objectives of your board. So to suggest this is about better, I think that you're equal to the task. I want to make it clear my concern would be more about aligning the budget, the contribution the city of Hamilton provides for the service to a body that is aligned more politically with the area that we have captured. So it's a bit of a nuance, but I want to make sure that this is it's not my position to suggest even fathom that Niagara's not doing a good job with the Conservation Authority. It's more about better aligning who's paying for what in regard to those services.
Yeah, no, and I'll comment through you, Madam Deputy Mayor. I certainly recognize and appreciate those comments. My comments, we work on behalf of the residents of the watershed. We are at the discretion of our partners within the language of the Conservation Authorities Act. How that is affected, then that was to my point of better. Again, we understand what our mandate is. We understand our working relationships, and we understand listening to the voices of our partners. And certainly, of Hamilton and this council is a valued voice, and we're more than willing to listen and have constructive dialogue.
Appreciate it. Those are my questions.
All right, thank you, Councillor. I have no further speakers. Go ahead, Councillor Green. Go ahead. See, I step out for a few mintes and look what happens. Go ahead.
We missed you, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you.
I do have some questions. I don't know how nobody. I don't think anybody brought it up, but just through you, what is our outstanding obligation or payment in protest right now that we're dealing with as it relates to the MPC? Because the last time you guys were in, it was a very different conversation. None of you were here. I felt like we got mugged. Where are we with that?
Confirmation of the amount, please.
Well, I could give you the preamble, but as far as answering specifically dollar amounts, I'll leave that up to our CAO.
Through you, Madam Deputy Mayor. So I believe you're referring to the whole levy apportionment and that differential?
Yeah, I think there was like a 10 or 15-year history of payments going one way, and then you had somebody show up, and the next thing you knew, we tapped our pockets, and we were out for 20 or 30% more increase in 1 year at the blink of an eye. Not quite fully understood, and nobody's brought it up, and I don't know why, but I am. So I'd love to know what happened.
And it is to do with the budget, so it's quite an appropriate question.
And through you, Madam Deputy Mayor, Councillor, I love the colorful language as far as mugging the City of Hamilton. I'll give you a brief preamble. Ultimately, we are bound by either a tri-party agreement between Hamilton, Niagara, and Halton to fund the levy, or we are bound by provincial formula. Under the circumstances that we're presently faced with right now, we utilize the provincial formula. We're more than happy to sit with our parties around the table and work out that tri-party agreement. But until that occurs, certainly we have to default to the provincial formula.
But
and Peter was going to provide the actual amount, because I think that was your question, was what the actual amount.
What was the increase?
Yeah, so through you, the differential that's been called is approximately $427,000.
Yeah. So it sounds to me, though, is that the councillor present doesn't realize this is already under protest. We paid this under protest. Mm-hmm. So where is the process at right now with regards to us, $400K a year now added on to our tax levy for what we're still trying to figure out? I don't know. So where are we with that?
So unfortunately, we don't have anyone from legal here.
We have Mr. Zagaric who will answer it.
Perhaps, excuse me, gentlemen, I'm just going to ask our GM to comment on that, please. Mike?
Through you, Madam Deputy Mayor, I'll just provide an update in terms of the status of the appeal. So the appeals date back to 2015. So the 2015 levy was appealed, as was 2016, and likely the City of Hamilton, pending the timing of being before the Register of the Commissioner of Lands and Mines, will likely appeal 2017. So of where we are with respect to the process, we're still awaiting a meeting with the Register of Commissioner of Lands and Mines. I believe the dates we're looking at now are the end of May, early June 2017. And again, to the councillor's previous question, the appeals as it relates to the 2015 and 16 levy are still outstanding. The City of Hamilton has made payment in protest as it relates to what was levied against the city. And in terms of amount, we're showing a differential as it relates to 2017 and somewhat lesser in previous years. But for 2017, somewhere in the area of $785,000.
Okay, Councillor.
Over the 3 years, Madam Deputy Mayor, we're talking about over $1 million. It's not a differential. It's very far apart in terms of where our understandings are with this, and I appreciate that. Sometimes Madam Deputy Mayor, you change the name to protect the innocent, and I get that, and we're back here before us again. But I'm very interested for my taxpayers as we get into this budget time of having a real discussion around that $1 million over 3 years. And I'm very interested in some of the different alternatives that have been put up around the table, so at least we can go back and look our taxpayers in the eye and say that we're not getting pickpocketed. So I appreciate you guys being here. Welcome to Hamilton. It is a fantastic city. We'd love to have you back on a different occasion for a different conversation.
Okay, thank you very much. And I'm sorry, you're not, no. I will not allow that rebuttal. No, thank you. That's the end of the conversation. And I have no further speakers on the list, so a motion to receive the presentation. Councillor Aidan Johnson, Councillor Brenda Johnson, all in favour? And that is carried. Thank you. Councillor Jackson.
So, Madam Deputy Mayor, while you were out of the room on other business, Stephanie will be working with myself and Councillor Brenda Johnson to begin a conversation, formulate a notice of motion at a future GIC that captures our request of the HCA and the NPCA having a dialogue of possibly transferring BIM lands to Hamilton. And just advising you of that because you're out of the room. Thank you.
And thank you. And thank you, Councillor Jackson. So, Madam Clerk, will that be a notice of motion at the next GIC?
Through you, Madam Deputy Mayor. Yes, it should be ready.
Okay, so that will be on Thursday then. All right, thank you very much. And any motion, please? Madam Clerk.
Through you, Madam Deputy Mayor. It won't be on Thursday. It'll be at a regular GIC, so the February 1st one, outside of the budget process.
February 1st. Okay, thank you. So that notice of motion will be coming to February 1st. So may I have a motion to adjourn, please? Councillor Maria Pearson, Doug Conley, all in favor? That is carried. Thank you, everyone. Good discussion, and thank you to our presenters.